Hello and welcome to Game Brain, a board game podcast about our gaming group. I'm Ben Mandelker and joined today by two luminaries in the field of playing board games, Trey Alsop and Jordan Saya. How are you two doing?
I'm doing great.
Yeah.
I'm great. Happy to be here. I feel like this is like getting late in the season of Game Brain podcasts. Like we're one of the few surviving members of the tribe.
Yeah, we're like getting down and we're getting late into the Survivor season.
Who will be here at the end, Ben?
Oh, by the way, speaking of Survivor, Jordan, I am woefully behind on Survivor. I've only wathed one episode.
Oh,
so far.
You are missing
so
out.
Far?
It is very good.
Great.
This is an incredible season of Survivor.
I think I'm gonna do some catch up this weekend because I was in Trader's Land for the first, like Q1 was Trader's Land and then it became White Lotus. I really can only take on one show at a time after all the crap. So now that White Lotus is done, I think we're going to slot Survivor right in.
Amazing.
But like as usual, like every time I'm ready to dive into Survivor, the episodes are so long these days and I just wish they would scale them back a little bit, but
They're not an hour, isn't it?
they're now like 90 minutes to
They're
2 hours.
90 minutes,
Wow.
2 hours with commercials, I think.
Yeah,
But they're
it's too much.
They're really incredible. I mean, this is a very good season.
The show is better than it's ever been.
Yeah, it is.
Although Jeff Probst is getting a little long in the tooth. Like he kind of has this whole shtick that he does where like if you pause for one moment, he's going to try to make it a self-help moment where he's like, what's going on here? This is like amazing because this is teamwork. This is what Survivor's all about. And you're like, okay, come on. Let's just like get to them crawling in mud and breaking their shoulders.
Yeah. I don't want to spoil anything, but I will say that for the first time in Survivor history, Jeff Probst was moved to tears by something that happened on the show.
Ooh, wow. He must have been listening to Game Brain.
He was.
Yeah. It's, Trey is getting choked up right now just at the thought of all the games we'll be talking about today. I can tell.
I am excited. I'm thrilled to be here, and my goal today is to compare every game to the appropriate Vital Lacerda game.
Okay.
Oh,
You
yeah.
got
Okay,
it.
that is my goal. But I too am just moving out of White Lotus Land because it's one of the few shows that Jenny would watch.
Okay, and Jordan
With
hasn't
me.
watched it.
I haven't
we can't
seen it
say
so I won't
anything.
spoil.
Yeah.
I won't spoil. I
Did
don't
you
think
guys like it though?
Yeah, I thought it was great.
Because
Because
my
there was
favorite
some there was some
season, but-
early dislike, right, of
Yeah,
the
I
season.
thought it was fine. I
Okay.
thought like it was slow, but I feel like that's the vibe of the show.
Sure.
I feel like I understand what the show is, which is that the characters are detestable and we enjoy detesting them. So I generally that's fun.
It works out well.
But unlike you've moved to Survivor, I've moved to Wolf Hall season 2. That's who I am.
Wolf Hall.
Wolf Hall.
Is that like on BritBox or something?
That's BBC PBS joint production of the Hilary Mantel.
Yeah.
My favorite book pretty much of the last 40 years is Wolf Hall.
Okay.
And so they've now finally, like 10 years later, done the second pass of this amazing series with Mark Rylance, who plays Henry Cromwell.
Oh,
In
James Cromwell?
No, not James Cromwell. I'm blanking on my.
He's just
brain.
Thomas.
Cromwell. Thank
it's
you.
a biography of James Cromwell.
No, it's Thomas Cromwell, Henry VIII. You know,
Yeah.
all of the wives and executions and stuff, and it's really incredibly done.
I'm sure my dad is watching that, and I'm sure he's going to ask me questions about it when I see him this weekend. And so now I am equipped, and that does sound actually pretty amazing.
It does. I started that book and I haven't finished it.
But before we get down too far into our White Lotus Wolf Hall Survivor path here, which has nothing to do with what we're talking about, we are reviewing a new sizzling hot game called Galactic Cruise. Jordan just got burned by the mere thought of it. He got singed by Galactic Cruise.
How did you get?
I just went tss into the mic.
okay.
Yeah.
Things
Because
are frying up.
it's so hot, it's sizzling.
It's hot like the White
Trey,
Lotus. We are going to be reviewing that. We're doing a deep dive, let's say. But what's really exciting is that we actually have a bunch of cool, fresh plays too. To come back to. And like, I also just want to tease for future Game Brain episodes that there's still plenty of games that we still need to review. So there's plenty of content coming down the pike. I'm excited about because there are a lot of games at year end that we still have, I think, on our roster.
So what's on your list?
I would say Endeavor Deep Sea. We need to talk about.
I still haven't played that.
It's great.
Everyone
love
told
it.
me you would love it.
Trey,
You would
Trey,
love it.
Trey,
Everyone has-
you would love it.
Everyone
Yeah.
has such a great idea of what I will like and dislike. That's
really
fantastic.
good. I only played it once. I really liked it a lot.
All right, super.
I do think Salt Fjord at some point will probably be. I don't know if there'll be a deep dive or not, but I think it might be because a lot of people are talking about that one.
Yeah.
Maybe even railways or the South African rails. Jordan,
I would love to talk about South African Rails. I mean, it's an older game, but the new release came out last
it's a
year.
new release.
Yeah. That could
there
go
was
with
several
Salt
other-
Fjord,
We
right?
could
The two of them.
theoretically. I mean, there's.
I didn't mean to put you on the spot.
No, I love Agent. We actually still have not done a review of Agent and Tigers.
I want to play more Agent Tigers.
I would love to play more of
I
that,
only played
especially because
that
it's
once.
getting a proper like re-release. I think by like Lookout Games or something.
Oh, nice.
Or something along those lines. So there's many more games to discuss, but we bumped Galactic Cruise to the head of the pack because it's hot and sexy.
Let us embark.
Well, actually, before we embark,
Not on
that,
the review.
Oh, yeah. Okay, here's our first stop on our Galactic Cruise, which is I think our last episode. We had a very long and in-depth conversation about how the March Meepleness would pan out, and we went through all the picks, which is just an excuse to talk about board games. And we did give a winner. The winner was Agricola,
And I didn't even vote for it.
Yes, thank you for not participating in our big social media event of the year.
I did the first round, and then somehow I thought I did it so poorly because like the buttons weren't working on my screen. I don't know, and so I just started typing into the comments.
So what? Basically, to those who want to know how this is on Instagram, when there's like a poll, there's like two options. You press one or the other, and I don't know what happened with Trey, but like all of a sudden I had like 4 messages from Trey because I was on controlling the account. And 4 messages, it would be like brass. It's just him saying brass, raw, or something like that. And I was like, I don't know what happened to
Put your vote in the
I
chat.
did-
Put your vote in the comments.
I did add your vote to the tabulation.
It's so weird that the button worked on everyone else's phone, but not yours. Yeah.
I know.
But it was that was actually incredibly fun, and I want to thank everyone who did participate in that. And it was fun to see people chatting about it on our Discord or just in the comments. And I tried to whip up a frenzy with it, and
It was fun.
it was cool. It was cool to see what games also excelled and which ones didn't, and it was a good time. I want to do it again next year. So
Yeah, definitely.
it was good. Congratulations to Agricola, a game that really people don't ever give it its due. It's just a game that people don't know
They
about.
just did. They just did, Ben.
No, it's a great game and totally deserved it. And I came down to Agricola and Brass, and so couldn't think of probably.
But it was Brass Birmingham, right?
Brass Birmingham.
Right.
And I think today, as a comment on Agricola, Awaken Realms, that are redoing the fancy version of Agricola, announced a new expansion that includes irrigation, mills, and berries.
Ooh, that's cool.
Fun fact. We'll see what happens with it.
Yeah,
That
and
would
then
be
there's
like
also
the first real expansion
Since Farmers of the Moor, yeah.
Since Farmers of the Moor, which
Yeah.
Tom loved.
But yeah, Farmers of the Moor didn't really get a lot of love.
It didn't.
But this one, apparently, as you build up your irrigation, you create extra, incentive for other players to come to worker placement spots on your board.
Oh, get out! That's a little El Burrow-ish. Oh no, it's not. No, it's not. I take it all back. El Burrow is thinking like how you can deliver on behalf of other people, but no,
It's a little Keyflower-ish.
Keyflower.
There you go.
That's a very cool idea.
Yeah, we'll see.
And there's also the zombie situation
Zombie too.
happening.
Well,
the
yeah.
zombie Agricola.
Yeah.
Yeah. I did see that, and I don't
get it.
I don't know.
I think we can all agree that's going to be the best version of Agricola.
Well,
That'll be the one.
It's
for
weird that
people.
there's a new edition of Agricola because we're still kind of in the new edition, and they just did was it like a 25-year edition?
No,
or whatever?
15 years.
The 15, the big box.
That was the 15th
which I
year.
got.
Which I knew not to get because I knew they were going to do a 20th year. Didn't you know they're going to do a 20th year?
Well,
So wait,
it's still
is this expansion going to work with just like your basic Lookout games?
I don't think so. I think it's going to be fresh art, fresh everything. I think. Because that's what they did for
Fresh art,
Castles of
fresh
Burgundy.
fish,
Fresh berries. Yeah.
Well, I don't like that.
That's
I'll
fair.
try it.
Well, no, I don't like that. Like, I can't add it to my game.
Totally.
You have to have the Awaken Realms version. That's stupid.
Oh, yeah.
Sorry, it's
No,
stupid.
that's fine. Yeah. I mean, you
If
probably
that's what
could,
it is.
and it would just mismatch.
Yeah, I mean, as long as the card backs are. But the thing is, like, it's.
Yeah.
not
I think that's right because they don't
Got
have
to
Clemens
see them.
Franz doing the art
I
probably,
don't
so you
think
can't
they
have
do.
the card back.
No, that's not right. Clemens Franz, I feel like
That's
it's-
15 years ago that he made.
But they're it's like Clemens Franz is so good at creating that bucolic farm, adorable setting, and I don't know, I'm open to other.
I think the
farm
thing
art.
is like the Agricola fan base is so dedicated that they're going to buy
Yeah.
a new version no matter what.
That's what I was
And they'll
wondering
be
about, though.
okay.
Like, are people going to want to buy this new expansion? Because that's probably a lot
Is
of the
Lumen
cost.
going to buy it?
Well, yeah, sure. Lumen's gonna buy it.
Am I going to buy it?
I don't know.
Yeah.
Because
So-
are you going to want to play with berries and irrigation? Maybe you're
So
not
this
going
will
to
be
like it.
like
I'll
the
certainly
20th?
try it. Sure, yeah.
all right.
So this will go with like the 20th edition from Awaken Realms.
Yeah, exactly.
And but it can also be compatible with the 15-year, or do we know anything?
I don't
about
think
this?
so. I think it's not compatible with any. I mean, I don't know for sure, but based on the art I've seen being very different from the art of the base game, and the 15-year edition, which uses the same art.
I don't know. I'm so angry. It's not like I sit and pull off Agricola off my shelf every like. I'm like, I play this game every week. How could they do this to me? Like, I haven't pulled out my edition of Agricola in over a year. So.
Actually, I mean, if you pulled it out every week, you'd probably be more okay with it because it's not.
You're right. I actually would be more okay with it. Okay, well, that's a cool piece of news, and let's go on to some recent plays. And there's one game that all three of us have played over the past 2 weeks, and it rhymes with Polymouse.
What could it be?
It's Molly House.
Oh, okay.
By Molly House, by Joe Kelly and Cole Worley.
Right.
So I don't know, Jordan, you want to give you're the biggest Cole Worley fan, who of course is not just Cole Worley, but like you want to give the pitch to this game, tell people what it's about?
Sure.
Or a vibe. And
in Molly House, you play as Mollies, who are members of the queer community in Victorian England in the late, I don't know which century it is. 1700s?
I would say no. I think it was 19th.
1800s. Okay, in the late 1800s.
While you talk, I'll look it up.
And in this community, you're looking for ways to accrue joy by expressing your desires and by engaging with the community.
Early 18th century London.
18th century. Okay, yeah.
Okay,
cool. All right. So, and you are. So you're trying to express your identity and, find joy, all while dodging the Society for the Reformation of Manners, which is this anti-queer organization that's hunting down these people. And so the way this community was organized was around these Molly houses where they could go and, have parties and, find joy and express their identities, et cetera, et cetera. But then the society would like try and infiltrate these houses and shut them down. And so in the game, you play as one of these people who's at the start of the game just trying to find joy by playing cards into these collective hands, right? But as the game goes on, constables and rogues can infiltrate your party, can, find out that you're engaging in a way that, quote unquote, proper society would find improper. And eventually they can try and have you indicted. And, if you're indicted, then you have some choices
Which
to make.
sounds bad, but in fact is much worse.
It's much
Right. Right.
It's much worse. I can just say, spoiler alert, in my one and only play of the game, I was hanged for sodomy in this game.
No.
So it was not a happy ending for my character.
In my 4 games, I've been hung once.
Oh, well, this is an interesting game. So I famously have been on record many times, like I've not really connected with too many Cole Worley games, but I was in DC about a week and a half ago, and purely coincidentally, I was staying at a hotel a 10-minute walk away from a convention called Circle DC or CircleCon, which is, I don't want to mischaracterize it, but I believe it's like a historical war game convention, or at least that's the emphasis. That's what seems to be on display there. So as would happen, this was happening. As it would happen, it was happening. And Candace was there. Mm-hmm. And so Candace was like, come on over. So I got off the plane, checked into my hotel, and then suddenly was in a board game convention. So I met a bunch of people through Candace, and the convention closed at 8 for the night. And so we went back to my hotel, and I was staying at this like very like cool, hip, trendy hotel, and we set up Molly House in like the lounge, which was funny because it's like that cool music is playing and like everyone's looking chic, and then we have a Cole Worley game out there on the table, but people kept walking by and they're like, oh cool, what's that, And what was also cool is that, side note, a mother and her 2 daughters set up a game of mahjong right next to us. So we had like a little bit of a gaming situation.
That's cute.
Which was so cute.
Yeah.
And they had a bottle of red wine, and we got a bottle of rosé from the bar, and it was, their table banter was very different from our table banter, because theirs is about mahjong and ours was about like, oh no, I just got indicted for sodomy. But it's a spectrum. But that being said, so it was a really cool environment to play Molly House in. And I sort of was going back and forth on where do I stand on this game, but I actually landed on that I think I actually like it. I think I'd like it. I liked it. What I found fascinating about the game was the core mechanic of there's the card play, which is that you're doing these quote unquote festivities which is when you're all getting together at a Molly house and you're going to have a party. And that is like,
and this is card play.
It's card play, and everyone is contributing a card to the
So it's
center.
co-rolly game, which there's suits and there's values on these cards and there's following and what does that mean? And we're trying to put together like one of 4 different possible kind of
Hands,
outcomes.
right.
It is, there's 4 different types of hands that you can play that we communally build together.
Right. So every player plays 1 or 2 cards. The community plays 1 or 2 cards, and then you're making 4 card hands.
Yes.
Right.
And like of the cards that are in the pot, you're going to say, okay, which combination here gets the best hand as dictated by the game? And if you have a crappy hand, like the best hand is, what's it called again?
It is called a surprise ball.
Yeah. So you're having a surprise ball. And then the next tier down is a christening. And then the next tier down is just a dance, right?
Right.
And then
And a quiet gathering.
if you fail with your cards, then you would just have a quiet gathering.
But it's not even just like it's not just to fail. I mean, you actually do this sometimes because if you played the cards you needed to play, very bad things would happen instead of just bad score happening to one person, right? Isn't that kind of the trade-off there?
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah.
Because there is a deck called like the gossip deck.
Yeah.
And the idea is that when cards, if you have to discard a card to the gossip deck, that gossip deck will eventually be sort of seen by the Society of Reformation,
of
and
manners.
then the combination of cards in there could lead to bad things happening to you. And so you are it's basically, if you've ever played Surfasaurus Max, have you ever played Surfasaurus Max?
Yeah.
It is almost an identical concept.
The little mini card game in the festivity. Yeah.
And it's so fun in Surfasaurus Max. And there's no but here. Like, I think it is actually continues to be incredibly fun in this game. Like, I think that central card play is very, very fun. And where I struggled was that, like, this card play is so fun, but there's so much stuff that gets kind of tacked onto it in terms of, are you going to be an informer? Are you not an informer? If you are an informer, then what happens if you have an indictment? Who are you going to inform on? Well, how do you win the game? Like, it like opens up this whole world of outcomes of playing the game that I found to be like very messy and annoying, because it's like this game has such a pure element of fun into it. So why are you adding all these like permutations of how it could all wind up? And it's like, it really, really annoyed me. But when I read the rules again, I was like, you know what? Maybe it just requires a little bit of absorption of the rules.
I think a second play helps a lot with absorption of the rules. I also think that the game's rules are so thematic, and it's one of those games where it's not that knowing the theme will help you understand the rules.
Right.
It's the reverse. Knowing the rules will evoke this theme for you.
Yeah.
And Trey was doing a really good job of this in our play, where he would stop the game and say, okay, what's happening here? And we would go and explain the mechanics. And I felt that the description of what was happening was extremely thematic. And that only expanded in games where I had a better idea of how the game plays.
Because it's kind of like it's not a trick taker, but you're following with suits or stuff. When you're first learning it, it's kind of a tough teach. And I think the card play is actually quite like subtle and complex. So it's very hard to know on your first play, like, the card I'm playing, is this good for me? Is this bad for me? And like these answers of like, well, it depends, are kind of really frustrating when you're learning. It doesn't mean it's not true. But it was hard to get my mind to stop being so literal and say, like, what am I doing by playing the 4 of hearts here? And
well, there's like weird stuff like, okay, you want to, if you score a card, so if you're one of the cards that makes a really good hand in that festivity, it can go into your little tableau, and that like adds on to your reputation. But then if you don't score a card, something bad could happen, and then you might actually lose that card, and then it's replaced with a cube. And I'm like, well, why does it matter if I have a cube versus a card?
If I understand this correctly, because maybe you even can correct me here, Jordan, like, you become more aligned and invested in one of the 4 Molly houses. And so when like you successfully have a party at one of these Molly houses, you essentially reap more joy when it comes off. But by the same token, when kind of the accusations come down from the gossip pile, the more tied you are to that Molly house, the more you suffer the negative consequences.
And that was
That's
something
exactly
in the
right.
rules. And so one thing that where I had a struggle when I talk about like absorbing the rules is that we kind of like sat there and learned the game from the rule book right there in that lounge. And that was kind of like the worst way to learn the game.
Yeah.
100%.
It's always hard to learn a game when someone's just reading out of the book. And it's also hard when it's it's like a hotel and we're drinking, and like I was like trying to like focus, and I'd also flown in, like I had only landed a few hours earlier, and so I'm gonna pull that card. But it was kind of hard to like I understood all the mechanics, but it was hard to understand like the big picture, what was going on.
Sure.
And that night I went back and I read the rules, and like right there in that first page they say, as you throw these festivities, you gain reputation, which could give you more joy, but it opens you up, makes you more vulnerable to attacks. And I was like, for some reason, it's like I knew that, but I didn't really process that until I read it on the page. I was like, oh, okay, so I see. So when your cards become cubes, your cubes are kind of like more like
They're permanent.
It's like your reputation is like
that's a permanent association.
I was like, what is this cube?
Whereas the cards are more,
more
temporary,
ephemeral.
and they
Yeah.
can
And
be converted to permanent.
But also the way
I think actually the way to look at it is the cards are unknown to the Society of Reformation.
Right.
And once the Society learns that those cards are in your reputation, those cards become cubes, and you can never walk that back. They're going to judge you for that
like
forever.
everyone knows that you're associated with it. And like I found that when I read the rules later that night, because I was like so much of this game I thought was actually genuinely super fun, and then there was so much that was very annoying to me that I was like, I need to read these rules. And when I read the rules, I was like, this is actually not as convoluted as it felt. And it's just a matter of like just like processing. And I think we didn't realize there were player aids, and so I still think it's
pretty
messy.
convoluted. It's still a cool whirly game that has, like the 3 possible outcomes.
You can win this way or this
how
way.
you win or lose. That's a little
He
OC.
loves to shoot them.
They're
in
really
these
simple
games.
though. I mean,
You say that, but they weren't. They weren't simple to me. I mean,
okay.
because I'm going to compare every game to a Lacerda game.
Yeah.
The one that this reminded me of, in some ways, was CO2.
Yeah.
Just in that it's in a kind of, one thing that's interesting about it is that it a lot of times feels like we're all in this together, cooperative game, but that's like not actually the case. And in fact, it's not exactly a betrayal mechanism, but you can turn informant to the police on a specific house.
Right.
And so it's not, and you also can play where like, oh, Jordan's doing too well. We need to actually do things that might get him killed.
Right.
And so that's kind of interesting and hard to grok. It also, my perspective as someone who designs LARPs, I felt like, oh, wow, this is really a tall order for a board game. And I could certainly see this game as a LARP or an indie RPG really well. Like, how well does it work as a board game? And I do kind of wonder, it's like, there's actually like really serious themes here in which your potential ending is you're betrayed by a member of your community and you're hanged.
You're hanged, yeah.
So like, content warning, be careful. Like, this thing can actually feel really weird. And I think it's also, I think a lot of people might go into it feeling like, oh, well, I can never play the betrayal card in this game. And certainly the way I was feeling is like, that would always feel bad to me. So I kind of don't want to do that.
It's funny because for me, as a gay man, it like, none of that really pinged on my radar. I wasn't like, oh my God, like I wasn't pinging anything with homophobia. I think I was actually just happy that there was a game that was co-designed by a high-profile designer that was centering queer culture, which I thought was really cool. But on the other side, when I was reading a review later that night, there was a very, very, very well-written review, but it was talking about how, like survival goes part and parcel with, the gay experience and all that stuff, which is so true. And then kind of it took me to a really strange place where I was thinking, my favorite part of this whole game is when we do the festivities and we do the card play. It's so fun, and it's actually it's really just, you just kind of want to live in that space. And then the moment that the game kind of teeters into this like moment, this mechanic of will there be an informant, will there not be an informant, and then like how will the game end? Was the joy going to be up here? Then what happens to the informant? Well, did the house survive? Did the house get closed down? And then what happens to the informant? Did they lose? Was it okay? Did they lose all their indictments, or they get killed, or everyone dies except the informant lives? It goes into this very, to me, clunky space, all in an effort to include this very dark side of what happened to this community. And so like there's part of me that says, well, this is really good that this game is demonstrating to people once again that like gay people have had a rough and continue to this day to have a rough go of it, and there is always persecution. But then it also made me feel like sitting here reading this review, I was like, man, at the same time, like the best part of the game is the fun stuff. And the game gets fully clunky just so you can bring in the gay trauma. And it's not like, oh, just to bring in the gay trauma, but it made me reflect, like, why can't we kind of just have a game that centers the gay experience and we can just live in the joy of it? And like, why do we always have to have the like, and then like there was also persecution? And I know 100% why, but it took me to a weird place of like, man, that kind of sucks that we can't just tell the story of like how cool it was that there was a gay community that came together for a brief moment in time.
That's fair.
It's a piece of art. I think it has something to say. So I'm really glad it got made. I'm still kind of processing it. And I also feel like, again, like coming from LARP, I would want some safety mechanisms kind of built around this. I think people need to know what they're getting into. I almost feel like there should be a little bit of a debrief and reflection after you play it too, kind of like going out of this game and just going cold into a game of terraforming Mars afterward might leave some, unresolved feelings to the two people who literally their games ended with a noose, where you go from the highs of we're celebrating joy and having parties to, and 3 out of the 4 people at the party died. But who played that's some heavy shit.
It's heavy shit, and that's again where I had this like strange reaction where I was like, man, like, can't we just have a gay game without the heavy shit? Like, does it have to be this way? But on the other hand, it's also really important for people to know. It's important for people to know it too. And like the truth is, I didn't know about this, and I think I'm probably better off like. Sure, it's like annoying.
It looks great.
Gay trauma, but like it's probably better to know that this is something that happened, especially right now. It's important to learn these lessons.
So I played a few games and I tried to incorporate that idea of having a debrief at the end. And I played with a few different gay people over the course of a few days. And I would always ask them kind of, after the game, but maybe a little privately, like, hey, how did you react to this? What did you think of this game? Because I'm curious about, the community it represents sort of. And I had a wide range of reactions that I think are kind of interesting. I had one friend who said, I had a blast and the game moved him to tears, and he was like very impacted by it. And he said, and I said, why were you moved to tears? What were you feeling in that moment? And he said, oh, this isn't really reflective of my experience, but it moved me because it showed me what it would have been like if I had been in a different age, essentially. And then I had another friend who said that he really liked the game and found it interesting, but he wasn't as emotionally connected to it. I think those are both fine reactions, but I think it's a really interesting piece that can do that. And I know you say you think it's an art piece, but the mechanics of the game are also, they're part and parcel with the theme and with the evocation of that feeling, and they're also good. Like it is not an unplayable game. It is a game that I think.
Yeah, I think that theme.
I'm not disparaging it by calling it an art piece.
No, I don't mean that at all. I just mean like it is a game that can be played at, like, it could be a game with a different theme, and it would be harder to understand the rules, but it would still work as gameplay. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, I think that like once I read the rules through, and I was like, okay, I can actually. Like, had we not learned this at the table, and had we had more of like a different kind of teach where like it's hard, I don't even know what the teach would be, where I could have sort of digested that like the first half of the game is going to have this vibe, but then there's going to be a pivot, and then like sort of like in 18xx, like at a certain point the trains are going to start to rust, and just know the game pivots at that point. And
I was going to mention that because that was your experience, and I thought that was how it would play every time too. But in 2 of my games, the joy just won out very quickly and very early, and we never turned on each other.
Well, that's but
it's interesting, right?
It's not so much about will there be informants. It's more like that a whole new set of mechanics kind of floods into the game, and then a whole new set of considerations of like, you can look at this token and see if whether it's an encounter token, and then like again, there's all these permutations of how it could go, which is something that always kind of annoys me, because it's like, to me, it's just trying too hard to create this like, whoa, it could be this or that or whatever. And I'm like, just let the game like lean into what the game is, where the game is strongest in my point of view. But it's only been one game that I played. And like I said, I actually wound up like landing in a space of, I actually really liked it, and I've been wanting to play it since.
Yeah. I mean, it's an interesting game. It's not going to be for everyone, because it is like, I think that Trey is very right to call it the feeling of betrayal you can get. And that's something that is like hard to, like, some people just hard not be comfortable with that.
Yeah.
And I think that's completely reasonable.
Absolutely.
But it's a really interesting design, so worth investigating.
Yeah. Another game that I played at CircleCon, I'm going to do this one first because it's newer and it's a hot commodity, is a game called Gibberers, which is a Japanese game, I believe. Typing. We all get under our laptops. So basically, it's I think technically it's a civilization game. It's not really, but it does express a certain aspect of civilization, which is language. And in the game, the designer is Keisei, which is Japanese. So in the game, we basically, as a group, are creating a new language. The game can be played in two different modes, kind of like a casual party mode, or something, the quote unquote expert mode, which has some more rules and things like certain tokens and da-da-da-da-da. So we played, Candace had a copy, and I met up with Candace and my new gaming friends at a bar after my show in DC, which was like the dream for me, like to do a live show and then go and play a board game afterwards. So we met up and we played this game. What the gist is that we are making a new language. And so we start off and we as a group come up with 18 words. And we like basically fake words like goo goo or blah, 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 or something like that. Like and 4 of those words have to be yes, no, I, and no, spelled K-N-O-W.
Oh.
And then the rest of the words just have to be whatever. And they have to be kind of like maybe words that seem appropriate to like primitive times. Although I didn't realize the primitive time thing. And I came up with the word for umbrella, which is, a little asynchronous. I mean, anachronistic, but fine. Anyway, once you have this this dictionary of 18 words, like nonsense words with meanings, then someone draws a card and the card will have a few different English words on it, or whatever language you've printed in. And you choose the word that you feel you are most able to translate to the group. Because going forward, you're only allowed to speak in your new language with those 18 words. So if the word were bowl, now you have to like somehow express to the table like bowl using only the 18 words that you have, and then people at the table can ask questions but only in those words, and it's kind of amazing. It
sounds really cool. Yeah,
it's a really cool thing because, well, first of all, also we played at a bar, and so we're sitting there at a bar being like kabonga wagga wagga ne wagga wagga kapuki puka ne kapuki, and it's just like people, you could see people actually staring at us like,
yeah, of course.
what are these 6 people doing? They're deranged over there. But it's fun because you do start to develop a language, and then once you get that word right, because you can give an official guess in basically in English, that word then enters your dictionary, and now that word you can use to understand future words, and then you sort of go through a deck of like words that get more and more progressive, more and more modern, and it just was such a cool game that kind of reminded me of Concept and I don't know, any one of these party games, but it also kind of makes you reflect on the nature of language and how we learn things, and it was super cool.
Sounds really fun. Yeah,
I'm curious. Again, I'm going to compare everything in the show again to some LARP experience I've had. There are 2 really well-known kind of LARP adjacent card games. One called Sign and one called Dialect, that are both released by Thorny Games, that are in this space, that are probably a little bit more narrative with that, but they often involve, like Sign is about kind of based upon this Nicaraguan deaf community that built their own unique sign language, and it kind of recreates that through sign, though, not through a syllable based thing. And then Dialect kind of does something similar, but
yeah, I haven't heard of those before.
But those are out, and people could check those out. Those are really well loved, I would say, especially because they do live in this space in between LARP and RPGs on one side, and it's their card games. They're tiny little experiences in a box, which is always amazing when you can pull that out.
Yeah, I think what was so cool about Gibberers too is that when you put out your 18 words, like this seems like it. These are good words, and then almost immediately you're like, oh, if only we had the word for the, like for this, so that like you find all the holes in your language and you realize the words that you really could have used. And
do you think you'll be better next time that you play?
No, I don't think so.
Okay.
I think there'll always be.
No, I'm just wondering if it's like, it has you can only play it a few times, or if it's something you feel like you could play endlessly.
I don't know.
But you're building a new language each time, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. What I can't tell is there kind of like a fun novelty of an experience, and then once you sort of go down this path and you have it,
do you actually want to get good at this game? I don't think that's probably the point.
Yeah.
No,
I mean, so the expert version has something like you can only give a certain number of guesses, and then there's like a gamification that makes it more of a thing. But I don't know. I just found it to be such a fascinating process that I really can't wait to play it some more. And I'm sure it's going to be translated. And I'm sure there'll be an proper English language version. I managed to get miraculously a copy from Board Game Bliss. It was like available. Every time it appears on that site, it goes away immediately. And I got it. It came like an English conversion kit. I mean, apparently you can very easily get it by just ordering it from Amazon Japan if you want to pay, 400% in tariffs these days. But you can.
Of course, Candace had it. This is what Candace does.
So, but you can get it, and then I think there may be files to like figure out how to translate it or something. But it's super cool, and I'm looking forward to having. We had to stop because it was closing time at the bar, but I want to do a full proper play.
Sounds really cool. How long were you playing for?
Just only about an hour or so.
Okay, nice.
Like I got there around 11:30 or so, and then there was like chatter for like 30 minutes, and I was like, people, I need to play this game.
Time. Yeah.
This chatter has to end. We need to play Gibberers right now. It's all set up. I cannot have all this banter. We need to play. So we played for an hour, and then the bar closed. So
cool. Yeah,
it was
really
great.
fun.
Yeah. Jordan, you went to a mountain retreat, right?
I did. I went to a mountain gaming retreat with some friends locally. Candace was also there. And as were, my sort of Guards of Atlantis group.
Yeah.
and others.
Your dedicated Guards of Atlantis 2 group.
Yeah. And so we played a lot of games, including 3 or 4 games of Guards of Atlantis 2.
Wow.
And it was incredibly fun. I've already sung that game's praises from here to there, but the new experience was we played a 5v5 game of Guards of Atlantis 2.
How did that go?
I thought it was 3v3, and
it goes up to 5v5.
It does go
That's
up to
the
5.
max.
Okay, wow.
Yeah, so you could play a 10-player game.
That wasn't tedious.
And so we thought, this is going to be tedious. This is going to be, we're doing this just to say that we've done it. No, it was a 2-hour, very tight, very fun game.
Wow.
It was, everyone had already played at least one game before.
Right.
So, there was no teach or anything like that. And we had a time system. We had a certain amount of time to pick a card. But again, the card selection simultaneous.
Sure.
And then we had every person, when it's your turn to go, we'd go through the initiative order. When it's your turn to go, you have 30 seconds to do your move. And then between rounds, we had 3 minutes to level up and pick your next card and chat with your team about strategy.
But you did decide to kind of like impose some those timer limits.
Right.
Out of necessity with 5 people. Makes sense.
With 10. But yeah, it was
10,
Right. Yeah. But it was worked flawlessly. I think it was actually shorter than a lot of 3v3 games. And a lot happened on the table. It was so fun. We got to see all these different heroes interacting. And by the end of the battle, when you go from 3v3 to either 4v4 or 5v5, you use the backside of the board. And instead of having a single lane, there are 2 lanes. So it's almost like you have one battle over here and one battle over there, but players can move between them.
Which is very thematic for where this game comes from.
Right.
Much more multiple lanes. Yeah.
Yeah, totally.
What do you mean by lanes?
So
in this context, I know what the board looks like, but
so this is kind of a board game MOBA.
It's a MOBA, right?
And again, I forget what MOBA stands for, but it's
online battle arena is the OBA. I don't know, multiplayer.
But it's games
Massive.
like League of Legends,
Yeah.
and they're real time. You kind of level up your heroes, but there's also like little minions going towards each other. But you're kind of coming at each other through essentially one of three lanes. There's physical barriers so that you kind of commit to left, right, or center, and there's some terrain that kind of makes things interesting in the center.
How there's like rocks on like the mountains on the side of the board.
So on the board you've seen is
center.
like there's one lane, and that's where the minions are fighting back and forth. And normally you have a minion battle in like in League of Legends in each of the three lanes. So you could devote resources to one lane, and if any one lane reaches the opponent's base, you can win.
Okay.
So this game, when you get to this higher player count, there's more of an emphasis on where are we putting our resources, which lane are we moving.
Cool.
Because if you move either lane to the end, you win. Right. Wow. So you sort of have to manage both. And so the way our game started out was it was like a 3v2 on one side and a 2v3 on the other side. By the end of the game, it was 2v0 on this side and 5v3 on the other. And it was like really interesting the way that sort of progression happened. So it was super fun.
Sounds really cool.
And like I said, really quick. And I would definitely do it again. I thought I would walk out saying, I don't need to do this again. I just did it for the experience. But no, it's very playable, which was remarkable.
Organize a 5v5 sesh.
I'd love to.
When you brought this game out, I assumed I was going to hate it.
Yeah.
And I really loved it. I think I'm not saying that it's ugly, but I think it does look like a Kickstarter monstrosity. Like it does, it kind of like Rise and Fall was a little bit that way too, where like you see all these pieces and there's a lot of color and it's like, this is not going to be my jam. And I don't know if a different version would make it better, or if it's just like, oh, this isn't my kind of game, but they did it so well that you can't deny that there's a really cool game here. And the design of the card play is just so strong.
It's incredible.
It's
strong. So interesting. And like the way these small numbers, as you level up, you get like little bonuses to your numbers, and it's super impactful. The leveling up feels good. The characters all feel very unique, and there's now 32 or something of them.
You kind of learn, like for the new player, you learn how to play your character as you play it. So the leveling up kind of opens up certain powers. Like you're not ready for the level 3 powers in a sense when you're just starting. You kind of need to train on the lower stuff.
Right.
It was very manageable. Especially the card play, again, made the decisions incredibly manageable. Unlike a game where it's like, here's 18 different things you could pick.
Right.
Galactic Cruise.
Sure. And the other thing they do really well, I think, is they have these characters that are, 1-star difficulty all the way up to 4-star difficulty.
Just in terms of complexity.
Right. And they're balanced in terms of how strong they are, but the ability, like the difficulty of running them, goes up dramatically. And even now, after 30 plus games, I've still never played a 4-star character because they're just too complicated. But so like there's so much to explore. You can keep going forever and ever and ever.
Jordan needs to.
Well, no one I've played with has played a 4-star either. Wow. We've been playing 1, 2s, and 3s.
Do it. What do you like? Why not? Just
one of them has 4 guys on the board, and if you kill any one of them, they all die. One of them reverses time. I mean, they're so complex. They're really cool, but
you should try it. I mean, the worst thing that happens is you lose.
No, yeah, that's true.
Is that all it is?
It's a team game, so if you kind of screw around, you're also screwing around on your teammates.
You'll never be good. You'll never become good at those 4-stars until you dive in and just fail a few times.
The 4-stars add complexity both for you and for every other player at the table, and I think that's why we're sort of holding off until everyone feels ready to jump in. Because if you know that someone can do something like reverse the initiative order so that the slowest cards go fastest and the fastest cards go slowest,
you're not ready for that on your first play.
Right,
you're
exactly.
Not ready for
That's too much.
Yeah. No.
Anyways, I would highly recommend trying the 5v5 game. And again, like the rules we use of implementing,
sounds like the perfect game for a mountain retreat.
It was
that does actually sound. It sounds wonderful. It sounds wonderful. Yeah. Any other highlights from the gaming retreat?
Yes, we also played a lot of my other favorite game, Blood on the Clock Tower.
Oh, this is Jordan Spectacular.
It was. Honestly, I played John Company too. I played all my favorite games. But Blood on the Clock Tower, we played with some new characters that are being released in an expansion called The Carousel this August, I think.
Okay.
I mean, you can freely get them online, so we just, proxied some tokens. But I have to say, the game's growing in really interesting ways. The characters that are coming out are fun and unique, and it's always nice to see this game like continue to grow. I don't know. Yeah. So I'd recommend checking out these characters. I'll just give you an example of one because they're pretty fun. There's one called the Yagababble. It's a demon.
The Yagababble.
At the beginning of the game,
Is that what our podcast is?
the
Classic
Yagababble is given
Yagababble.
the Yagababble is given a phrase at the beginning of the game, and every time they say it, they get a kill. So they have to find a way of, like, in public saying this phrase repeatedly to get kills without being caught for doing that.
Wow,
Pretty fun.
that's fun.
Yeah.
I like silly things like that.
Yeah.
What about you, Trey? What have you played recently that's sort of stuck in your brain, or at least is worth mentioning? Is there anything?
Jordan and I went over and had the same day we played Molly House. We also played Dune Imperium Uprising,
Right.
which was I had kind of a poor experience first play of Dune Imperium.
Yeah, we were together.
Yeah, exactly.
It was terrible. It was actually one of the worst plays I ever had of any board game.
And yet, this game, Dune Imperium, is beloved. And so I don't assume that people are all idiots.
No,
There's something to love there. And a lot of people view it as their favorite game.
And I got pretty far in our March Meepleness.
Yeah,
I think when you love it, you love it. But it was good to play Uprising, which is kind of a revised version a little bit. And had a much better experience, I would say. It felt like, oh no, this is making more sense. The cards mattered. I felt like I was understanding the decisions better. I could kind of see, I regretted some of my decisions early on of buying certain cards, but it's like, yeah, okay, it's a good game. It's especially in this revised version. It was starting to do what it kind of promised to do, which is it has this deck building aspect. And I think the first time I played, I was like, you know what? I bought certain cards that I never even got to play them. That seems wrong. Whereas the second time, I felt like I went through my deck probably like 3 times, and the cards I was buying had major influence on the game, even though I still didn't, win. It was, but it was competitive and very interactive. Felt like, it was you, me, and David, and we were often like really squaring off in some tough battles. And there was also a certain amount of what I would call like above the table play, where we were both posturing, like negotiating about like, you win this battle, I'll take the next one. Or like, well, I think I can win this one. I don't care what you say. And I was like, I don't know. I got a lot of cards here, and that was, it made for a very kind of Dune-y game of like threats and recriminations that made it nice, and also didn't overstay its welcome.
No,
I have to say that for all the shit I've talked about Dune Imperium over the few years, basically from that one play that was so bad that it traumatized me deeply, that I am actually back in a place of wanting to play it earnestly, because it was weird. I have a friend who lives in Chicago, and I'm really bummed because I'm going to Chicago this weekend, and I will not have time to do this, but like he plays Dune Imperium with his friends like every weekend, and they're not
That's their game.
That's their game, and I don't even know him as like a gamer.
Oh wow,
like that's not his feed is not filled with games. He doesn't talk about games, but like they somehow found this game and they just play it and they gather, and it's just like a thing they do, and like their joy for it that I see through social media reminds me a lot of when I started playing Catan. And how I would play Catan every week, and we would get together, and it was just the most fun thing. I was like, oh, it's time for a weekly Catan game. And just sort of seeing Dune Imperium like through his eyes in a sense, and the joy he has, it kind of it gave me like a weird FOMO. Like, I want to play with them, and I want to be part of this, and I want to access the fun that they're having with this game, because it's like I don't know, I felt like it just, I sort of saw like, oh, this game, I can see people are having so much fun playing this game. And I would rather like not hold on to the fact that I had this one bad experience that was really unfun. And I'd rather say, I want to access the fun that other people are having. So I'm bummed because I'm going to see him on Sunday, but I'm not going to be able to play Dune Imperium with him, which is a bummer.
That is a bummer, but you can play with us.
I will
Sometime soon.
Yeah.
I will say, I think this version is the way to go. It's really great. And like the cards, the way there are a lot of improvements, but for me, the cards are so much more thematic in this newer version, and they're so much more interesting, and they combo in better ways. So I think that's really that takes the game for me from like 7, 8 to like 8, 9, where I'm enjoying it more because I like these cards more,
So Dune Imperium in the March Meepleness, it beat Rise and Fall, which was not surprising, but it beat Terraforming Mars, which did surprise me.
Wow.
It beat Terraforming Mars.
I'm surprised in reverse of you.
oh, you're surprised in reverse. And then went up against Barrage, and for a moment it looked like it was going to take out Barrage, but then Barrage surged at the last minute, and so Dune Imperium got to the Sweet 16 and almost did an upset on Barrage, but it didn't.
Wow.
So that's where it landed on that front.
And there's new expansions too, like Bloodlines just came out, so it's a game that's gonna keep growing, just like Terraforming Mars and Barrage. And
It kind of fits in that same space that Agricola does, which is that it's worker placement and it has a heavy card-driven element that's going to make it really replayable.
And good IP, right? Like people who like, I think that people who are enjoying the movies, they might be drawn to it. And
Totally.
That's right. And it's a good example of where the IP can help your understanding of what's happening and speed up your learning curve and getting it. Because like, especially with like the battles, and we're going to like every round we're going to battle in this area, and you understand the different Bene Gesserit and different factions, like it's built on some good foundations there.
Yeah, you have to get the hooks before you can get the worms,
Yeah. So the last game that I want to talk about that I played is a game from 2023. It's called Land and Freedom, The Spanish Revolution and Civil War by Alex Knight. This is a game that I actually bought about 3 weeks ago, and it arrived because I heard about it on John Gets Games, and he talked about how he had this really great experience with it, and as he described it, I thought that sounds actually really cool. So I ordered it, not knowing that a mere 2 weeks later I would be stumbling into a historical war game convention where the designer himself would be there. And so I got to play it, my first play of it, and Alex kind of oversaw the experience, which was great. It's so nice to have a designer there that can answer literally any question that you have about the game. And I loved it. Like, I thought it was so fun. And basically in the game, we are in Spain in the late 30s, and the Spanish Civil War is happening. Fascists are overtaking the Republic. And it's basically a 3-player game, even though you can play with fewer and use NPCs. You want to play with 3 players. 1 player is the communists faction, 1 player are anarchists, 1 player are moderates, and we're all together. We all need to push back the fascist threat, because if we don't, then we all lose. But assuming we can push back the fascist threat, then one of us, we also want to be the best. And I think the implication is if we push back the fascists, then we will fill in the power vacuum. There's card play, and it's just a really great semi-cooperative game. Like, to me, this is one of the best I've played, where you really feel that pressure of how much do I help the group and pushing back the fascists versus how much do I try to help myself. And I have now played it twice, and I love it. I think it's great. It is the banter at the table is absolutely wonderful. And this is one that's kind of, I can see this being like a little bit of my springtime's obsession.
I can't wait to try it. I've wanted to try this game for a long time.
Yeah.
It looks really cool.
I'm actually a little shocked that I played this before you, Jordan, because it feels like it's such a Jordan game. Yeah. So I was surprised.
And how did you beat Jordan and Matt?
I know. In like a historical war game. But what's interesting about it, though, and this is where I think that Trey might not be your favorite, but we'll see, is that what the entire game comes down to, like, you're doing all this stuff really in pursuit of putting tokens in a bag.
There's a bag, right?
And basically after every turn, whoever has initiative puts a token in the bag. It's called the Bag of Glory. And at the end of the first year, you pull 1 token from this bag and it goes on the board. And at the end of the second year, you pull 2 tokens. And at the end of the last year, you pull 5 tokens. Though there's also a special auction where you can bid to make sure you get a token out. And at the end of the game, you just count up the tokens that have made it out onto the board, and that determines the winner.
And how many tokens are you putting in the bag? Because you're drawing out 8.
Well, if you are a shitty player like I am, you're putting in like 2 or 3. And if you are a good player like other people, they'll put in like 8. Okay. So, but it's cool because there were moments in the game where I felt like events were conspiring against me, or, I can't quite get this. I definitely felt victimized at certain points, but it was fun. And I played 2 games, both games I was the communist, but two different groups of people, 2 totally different games. And yet I still had similar outcomes in that I could not seem to get initiative and put tokens in the bag. And I was like, what's interesting about this is that, like, there must be fundamental approaches to this game that that I am doing. And so it doesn't matter who the players are, what the cards are, what the events are, because I got the exact same outcome in both games. And I thought that was actually very cool, because it makes me
making the same commie mistakes.
Yes. I'm like, I have to change my gameplay in some way because like I'm maybe being too good. I'm being too helpful against the fascists and not being too,
Yeah.
It was great. I love
really
it.
Fun.
I'm like, Jordan, I think you're going to love it.
Can't wait.
Trey, I think you would like it. Depends on just how much like you would enjoy.
Sounds like I might
bag.
appreciate it.
Maybe
you might
maybe
appreciate it more. I think the bag thing might annoy you.
What would it be like if you played the game with all the same rules, but instead of drawing cubes out of the bag, it's just most cubes in the bag wins at the end?
Well, so the reason why there's a bag draw, because I asked the designer, I said, you know what, I'm going back to my game group, and I know there'll be some people who will be frustrated with the idea of a bag pull. And I said, what should I say to them? And I don't totally remember what he said.
And I was pretty drunk, so I don't recall.
Fully sober, but basically one element is that it does kind of keep you guessing. Like the bag, there's an initial seating of the bag. It's done in a way that like you're kind of in it till the end, which is good because
it's not over till it's over.
Yeah. So even when I was playing and I was like, I can't seem to get anything in the bag, I still actually had a shot. And so it does kind of keep you in there to the very end. Otherwise you might say, well, screw this. I'm just going to tank it and let the fascists win.
I have a lot more patience for that kind of thing when you're in kind of a simulationist space where.
And that's the other part thing he said is that it is sort of simulationist. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's like, that's, having uncertainty there is more realistic. It's not great if you're like, we're trying to build a competitive, balanced board game. It's like, that's not really what they're trying to do here. They're trying to simulate this kind of three-way semi-co-op against fascism. Because like, it's possible that all three lose, right? Is that a thing that's on the table?
Yeah, all three can lose because the fascists can just win.
So, and there's going to be some interesting tensions in that. Again, that's kind of CO2-ish in the semi-co-op space. But no matter what happens, it's going to be an interesting story.
Yeah.
Right. So, and I'm not super focused on winning a lot of times. Like, so as long as an interesting story happens, that's going to be okay with me.
Yeah. What I found it was definitely one of those games where the table banter was like, like I'll make a deal with you, Trey, one turn. And then the next turn it's like, well, I know we had a deal, but I kind of need to do this thing.
Then your actual character as a person is revealed.
Or then all of a sudden you're like, Jordan, I know how to deal with Trey, but like we need to stop Trey. His his anarchists are out of control. We need to like reduce collective. We need to take away their liberties.
He's too good at this anarchy thing.
Yeah. So it's like the alliances are constantly shifting, and I just found that it was a really cool execution of an idea of this sort of tenuous coalition of groups fighting the fascists, but also being very self-interested. Like I really think it's great, and I can't wait to play more of it. We'll play a lot more of it. I want to get good at it. I want to actually be like, I want to learn the cards, and like understand.
You really like it, yeah.
Yeah, I want to like feel. I kind of want to.
You want to Twilight struggle it.
I kind of do.
Yeah,
and it actually also makes me want to play more Twilight Struggle. To be honest, But yeah, I think this will be a good one to play with some of y'all. Cool. Yeah. Any other games?
I'm just going to mention John Company really quickly because I played for the very first time the 1758 scenario, which is a scenario that starts in the middle of the game. And for a long time, I was avoiding it because I thought, if you want to get all of the fun of the later era stuff, which includes deregulation of the British East India Trading Company.
If you wanted all the fun of deregulation.
And opening up private firms, which are both really fun aspects of the game, you kind of have to play the full game, which can take like 6 hours. So but you can actually just start in 1758.
I could never deny myself deregulation.
There you go. Then you can just start with the 1758 scenario, and it's actually really fun. It works really well. And you get into deregulation in probably like turn 2 or 3. And it worked out great. It was super fun. So I'd recommend trying that scenario if you've been avoiding it like I had been, preferring like, either the short game in 1710 or the longer full game.
Okay. What about you, Trey?
There are some people out there that are very grateful that we don't talk about Avalon anymore. But there might be one person out there.
Tell me.
Who is curious, are we still playing Avalon? And the answer is yes. And I am finding new and interesting ways to play that game poorly.
Oh, me
okay.
too. I have actually been wanting to play Avalon for a while. You know, when the Traders is in full swing,
It makes you want to play Avalon.
I'm squawking a lot about like how I would do this or I would do that. Or if you get in this position, you got to say this. And so when it's going, I really want to play because I want to like actually execute these things. Or I'd play Blood with the Clock Tower too, or Super Hitler. I'd play all these things, and I haven't had a chance to play any social deduction games except for a one-off of Hollywood. 1947. I don't know when I played
That's
it.
a cool
sometime
game. I like
which I really like.
Yeah.
It's really fun, but like I kind of wanted to have like the proper game brain Knives Out Avalon sesh, but
Well, the only reason
had a
I
chance.
mention it is I think I managed to play the world's worst Merlin
ooh,
ever,
What happened?
which was that I played Merlin and the spies won on 3 consecutive fails. And that was because I incorrectly identified Percival as Merlin. One player kind of stared me down who actually turned out to be Mordred. They weren't even doing it on purpose.
yeah.
But I was very, very surprised when we lost because I thought the player was merely playing a terrible Percival. And in fact, and I was all ready for Tom to be completely wrong about everything.
Mm-hmm.
And instead, it was me.
Was Tom Percival?
No. Tom was not to blame for any of it.
Oh, that's too bad.
It's all my. But actually, I had thought that Mordred was Percival, so it meant that we were dead from 2 minutes on.
You were
But isn't it
confiding
But it
also
was
into
comically how bad the game went and how wrong I was.
Isn't it also Percival's job to correct you and be like,
It is. It is.
Yes.
But I would say, like Avalon can actually teach you real skills about like lying, how you stick to a story, how you can pay attention to people, how you have to kind of deal with uncertainty. You know, like you think you know things and you don't. I have certain reads. It can be a real problem if you put too much weight on your reads. And I think the example of like why this was really important is that once I had in my brain identified Percival because someone had given me those, you know, I'm having sex with you eyes.
right?
I was like, that's Percival.
Mm-hmm.
And the part of my brain that was open to other people being Percival was closed.
Yes.
Yeah.
that
I had
happens a
moved
lot.
on to the next part of the game. And so despite Percival being seated on the other side of me and making deep, meaningful eye contact with me throughout the game,
Yeah.
I was
Your
not
brain-
I was not
brain was not
open.
receiving
I was
it.
not
At-
in the
at
in the
that
market
point,
for Percival
Don't
anymore.
they just have to come out and say, listen, I'm Percival? And I know that's harmful to do that, but like, isn't that sort of,
It was
if
already
you still don't know
yeah,
who the evil
true.
team
The
is?
game
Yeah.
was already lost.
Yeah.
It was funnier this way.
Okay.
Yeah,
sure.
that sounds
So
great.
and it really was on me.
Yeah. All right.
So I don't think that the Percival player was truly at fault. They might be a little bit at fault,
Sure.
but it would also be like you have to when you have to shake Merlin and
Yeah.
say I'm Percival. It's the game is
pretty bad.
much over.
Yeah, sure, sure.
That's usually,
That's-
and the fact that
that's
you were
on me.
divulging directly to Mordred is kind of amazing.
Kept
Yeah,
on
like-
deferring to. I thought he was playing a weird game. It was
It's like, okay.
But I was like deeply surprised when the game ended on the third turn because like I just put Percival on the team. I know who everyone bad is because I'm Merlin. Those are the 2 bad guys over there, and then this is Percival. So I determined that Paul was 100% Mordred,
Yeah.
and he wasn't.
And he wasn't.
No.
Well, I do miss it. I'm hoping to play it again sometime. I've not been available on Friday nights for like, feels like 3 months and probably won't be for another 2 months. But, you know, someday I'll play.
So hopefully
Avalon
that
again.
wasn't too bad for the folks at home. But if you were wondering about Avalon,
Well, it was
we
an
also
interesting new aspect to it.
this last week we played Keyflower, and I just want to kind of pimp Keyflower again. It's like it's such a strong game in terms of just like simple, cool. The bidding mechanism, and then how you take pieces and form your own village, and then those become action spots for you or other people.
It's cool.
It's really
Although, you know, my flavor of it that I enjoy actually more, very unpopular opinion, is I really enjoy Key to the City,
which is
we played.
It's 99%.
It's pretty much the same. It's just like a little bit more streamlined. And I kind of enjoy that you don't like one thing that annoys me a little bit about Keyflower, because I do enjoy Keyflower, is like the whole, you generate these resources, but now you have to move them from here across your little road to here, which is cool because it's more decisions, it's more layers of strategy and complexity. But sometimes you're just like, I did all this effort just to get those resources, and then you still can't even use them yet. You have to get the horse and it's just kind of like, let me just live my life. And I kind of feel like Key to the City sort of lets you just it gives you the puzzle. You have all the same bidding, you know. I think
might sand the edges that I like off a little
I
bit.
think purists would feel that way, but for me, like I actually really like it's kind of a clean. To me, it gets to like what it doesn't matter.
Keyflower to me also like it represents the biggest disparity between like I think this is a really great game. And I think it looks terrible.
Yeah, it could use a
it
revamp.
Could really use. I mean, like not everything in it is terrible, but there's almost like two conflicting art styles within the game. But like the horse and chariot moving thing feels like it's just a prototype. Like there's a lot of really ugly art. Like it could use a revamp.
Does it have an app? I feel like it would actually be a really good app to play with and learn. Because again, I know sometimes some of my critiques, I'm like, ugh, the horse and the moving this. I know that stuff becomes second nature once you actually like some reps under your belt and you know
right but that's always a confusion to new players, like what is this thing, what do I have to do, wait, why can't I use these things? It get me.
I am but terrible at
meaty decisions.
Feels like it would be a good game for Awakened Realms to remake in the line of Agricola and Castles of Burgundy.
They should make
quite
a hybrid.
Old classic. It
should be like you create your Agricola thing and then send it off on the Keyflower.
There you go.
Yeah. Sure. Okay, cool.
All right, are we pulling into port?
We're pulling into port. I have 2 announcements as we pull into port.
Okay. Ooh.
That I forgot to make at the top. I feel like this is a good time because people may be skipping right to this section because apparently, you know, people want to get to the review. You know, announcement number 1 is that nominations are open for the Golden Geek Awards. So if you're feeling kind and generous, we would love to have
it's an honor just to be nominated.
Well, we're not nominated yet, so it would be
right.
an honor.
This is to help us get nominated.
This is the first round of asks, which is please put us in the ring, because actually I feel like the pressure is even higher because we've been nominated, I think, consistently for several years in a row. We never won, which is actually fine, but like if we were to now not even be nominated, that would be like
oof.
That's like,
and it does get us press passes to BGG.
And honestly, doesn't?
Well, it doesn't give us free anything, but it allows us to go into the dealer room early. And,
that's cool.
And then have people wonder if we're important.
I have to say, I think it would actually be a reflection on us and Paul. Because Tom and Matt were nominated last year.
Yeah.
And they haven't been on as much, and now it's us. And you're saying that you don't like us as much as them?
And I've been hosting a lot, so it's actually...
It's really you, yeah.
Feels even more like a referendum on me. And like, you know, it's okay. I've got a therapist. If things go sour, I will be ready to talk it out. People don't like me. No, but for real though, like we'd really appreciate that. So that's announcement number 1. Announcement number 2 is a really cool thing, which is that I am going to be joining a live stream tomorrow night because, well, let's see, this is Tuesday and I'm going to probably just get this up and onto our feed tonight, but you may be hearing this tomorrow, Wednesday, April 9th.
Yeah.
Please tune in I'll be on a live stream playing Railways of the Lost Atlas with heavy cardboard.
Yes.
Oh, nice.
So that'll be very, very cool.
What time?
Well, I mean, why ask such ridiculous questions? I have no idea.
You just have to follow Heavy Cardboard on YouTube.
I do.
Turn on notifications.
Yeah, I'm going to Boston. I have a show in Boston on Thursday, and I met Edward at the DC at the Circle DC.
Yeah,
and Martin, who's also part of it, he hangs out on our Discord every now and then. So I'm gonna meet up with him, and they're like, "Do you want to come on the stream?" And I was like, "Hell yeah,
that's cool."
So keep an eye out for that, and even if you don't see it live, it'll be in their archives.
Yeah,
it'll be on YouTube.
I went to HeavyCon for like 2 years, so I've met Edward once or twice. Yeah,
that's great.
He's a cool guy.
Yeah. We had a whole fun discussion about Molly House, and I can't wait. I'm excited and I'm also excited that it's a game that I like know how to play. So I'm not like.
Right. Are you going to teach on stream?
No. I'm not going to. Edward does a whole thing.
Yeah.
You know.
Yeah. I think you should win though.
I don't know. I don't forget. I bankrupted myself out of Railways of the Lost Atlas.
Also, Edward's like a huge 18xx guy. He plays a ton, right?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
it's like their big.
We're counting on you, Ben.
I'm gonna try to do my best. I'll be a representative of Game Brain.
Honestly, this is the West Coast versus East Coast matchup we've been looking for. Yeah.
That's true. Just like nominations, I'll just be happy to have a seat at the table. So looking forward to that. So with all that being said, those are the announcements, and now let's get into our review of big game hotness, Galactic Cruise, a 2025 game designed by TK King, Dennis Northcutt, and Colton Thompson, and the art is by none other than Ian O'Toole, who did lots
Everything.
of games, including games by a certain designer, Trey.
Reiner Knizia.
Vital Lacerda.
Vital Lacerda.
If that's how you say his first name, and I always struggle with that. So
Well,
hopefully that was close
Bill-
enough.
Yes. Jordan, do you want to tell us about Galactic Cruise, like what we do in this game?
Sure. So in Galactic Cruise, you play as a Galactic Cruise company. You're going to assemble your cruise ships.
Are we all part of the same company?
Yes.
Oh, we are.
actually,
All
like,
part of the same
We're all
company.
in like the
Oh.
C-suite,
Yes.
which is like we're basically all like VPs or something because we're vying to become
we're
president.
muckety mucks at
Oh, I
the
didn't realize that.
cruise company.
Yeah, no,
Well, we each
are in it.
have our own cruises that we're going to build, though. We're not working together.
That's our
in any
division.
sense.
Yeah.
It's our division. Okay. So you're going to build some cruise ships. You're going to sell some tickets to
by the way,
passengers.
by cruise ships, these are spaceships that are going to be having
Galactic cruise
We're not
ships.
building boats.
Right. So they're like rockets. They're composed of various rooms that you build into them. You sell tickets to passengers. You bring them on your cruise ship, and then you blast off. And then, while that ship is sailing through space, at the beginning of your turn, you're going to get a little reward for, the activities of that ship in space while you're still taking actions down on the ground, building more ships, selling more tickets, etc.
Technically, I would say this is a worker placement game because the action spaces are represented by like buildings at our corporate campus.
Yeah.
And you
like we're going
take a
meta.
worker off of your board and you place it onto a building, which allows you to do two actions. There are two different actions on each space. You can do them twice or one of each. And then if you have developments, which are these gears that kind of link the buildings together, then you can start to kind of link your actions so that even if I'm placing it on this one building, I'm actually taking the actions on an adjacent one because I have a development that links them.
Yeah.
And so
The way in which this is not a worker placement game is that you never block a space. So you go to a space, if someone else goes to that space after you, they just kick you back to your board and you get a little bonus, a little treat.
Yeah.
that's right. Your workers, it's one of those games where the taking workers back from the board actually is an income kind of action type of thing. So
But it's one you don't always want to do because if you can keep placing in prime spots and have other people bump you,
you want to be
you're
bumped.
probably better off
Yeah,
than
yeah,
if
yeah.
you're
But if
having to take the turn to pull back.
Right. But if you take a turn to pull everyone back, it's actually not the worst thing in the world because you have on your player board a break room. And so when your workers come back to go to the break room, and every time a worker goes into the break room, you get a perk, which is actually pretty useful. And on top of that, if you take a turn to bring everyone back, you still can do a single action as long as it's adjacent to one of your gears that Trey just mentioned. So it's like not actually as awful, which I actually really like.
Yeah, it's
So
not
it's-
that punishing, but it's still
So that's right. That's one of the three things you can do on your turn. You're either placing a worker or you are launching when one of your cruise liners is ready to go, you can launch it, or you are calling a meeting, which is the kind of Concordia. I'm tributing,
Manhattan
I'm pulling
Project.
everything back,
Yeah.
but I still get one action. So you're both going to get income from pulling things back, and you're going to get a single action at a space that is adjacent to the developments that we talked about there.
Yeah.
So
And that's like the flow of the game. And I think that actually what I would say is even more like it is, I guess, worker placement ish. It is sort of Manhattan Project ish of pieces are going out or they're coming back. It's also a race game, I think, most potently. I think that's like the vibe is like
you're racing all the time. Yeah.
where you're building these cruises and you're sending them out to space because as you send cruises out to space, you get to put cubes on a progress track. And as that progress track fills up, you're going to trigger intermediary scoring and then eventually the end of the game. And so like once those ships start going into space and the cubes start filling up that space, fill up the track, you feel the pressure to be like, oh, I need to get those cubes on that track because the more cubes you can get onto that progress track, the more scoring you'll be able to do. During
Yeah, and like I think
intermediary
the way to
scoring.
think about these cubes is kind of like, hey, this is a big deal with the company.
Yeah.
I've achieved this internally set goal, which is actually one of the kind of replayable aspects of the game is that the things that you're pursuing in this particular game
Right. So in
is
addition to when
somewhat
you launch,
randomized.
a ship, there's three
Right, you
categories.
get kudos for launching a
and
ship.
if you achieve those goals, you get to put out a cube out as well.
But it's a thing like when you get to go to the corporate boardroom and brag about your accomplishments, you can be like, these are all the cubes I've developed on this turn.
Yeah.
And
This-
so I'm going to score accordingly.
It's actually like reminiscent of Kanban, which
Yes.
is like you do things in Kanban and then you have like these meetings and you say like, I did this, and in fact, I would say so. This game, let's go a little bit, segue a little bit into kind of like presentation and theme before we get into like the nuts and bolts of like the mechanics and stuff. But like this game, I find to be actually very, very thematic. And actually, is the progress track is one of the areas where it's actually a little bit less thematic. That's actually an area where I'm a little surprised they didn't make it into a thing, because everything else in this game, they find a way to kind of make it part of the overall story of you working in this corporation.
Is it progress or is it prestige?
It's a progress track.
What are you? So is that the one along the bottom that you were?
No, that's
following?
reputation.
That's reputation. Sorry. So what the progress track?
That's where the cubes go.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's the timer of the game,
Right.
too.
That's the timer.
And we're going to do some intermediate scoring at certain points. Where essentially, where they're calling a meeting and
it is a meeting.
Kudos for Jordan for all of the wonderful things he's done this quarter.
Thank you.
Trey.
Exactly
you
it.
didn't do anything.
Yes, right. Trey had a rough go at the corporate meetings in our recent game. But
I will not be the CEO of our Galactic Cruise company.
But one thing that I really enjoy about this game is that I do think that the theme is really wonderfully incorporated to everything. When you bring your workers back, they go into a workroom, which I don't know, it's this little thing, but it's fun. And it's like anytime you have a chance to sort of have some sort of playful chatter at the table of like, well, calling a meeting, everyone get back here. Like it kind of like, that's always like a nice element. I think that there's this sending these cruises into space, and that all these, everything on your cruises, all these rooms that you can build have some element of personality. It's like, oh, I built a cruise ship that has a roller coaster on it, but also Martini Lounge, like it's kind of fun, those moments. And also just the moving around the board. There's a clarity to the theme that I really appreciate. And actually the best thematic touch of all, one of the best thematic touches of all games, one of the best components of all games is that, at least in the copy that I got, I don't know if this is the regular retail version, but I have the Kickstarter, is that the first player token is a employee badge that you wear around your neck.
Right. You were so happy to be start player in the last game.
It's great. It's such a great touch. Like it's so ridiculous, but it's awesome. I love it.
Yeah, it is one of the best first player markers I've seen. I think when you launch a ship is also a very thematic action, because you count down.
Yes.
Right. You say 5, and then you do the step that's associated with that number. 4, 3, 2, 1, and then you say launch.
Yeah,
that's exciting.
And each one of those steps is meaningful.
And
you're paying the costs for your launch.
You're loading up the passengers.
You're kind of setting what the reward's going to be.
It actually could be a very annoying process, because you actually have to do a lot. Like if you're going to launch a ship,
there's a lot to it.
There's a lot. You have to make sure you've got the resource. You got to make sure you have the customers. You have to make sure there's a pilot. You have to make sure you have the fuel. You have to have an itinerary. You have to load up an upgrade to it. And the fact that they break it down into 5 steps, and that you move your captain on this tower, like it's like you have
right next to the rocket.
Like you're going up the elevator.
Up an elevator, but you're actually all it is a checklist, but it's presented in a way that's totally digestible and is fun. So that way, by the time you actually put your meeple onto the ship, you go lift off. It's so silly, but it didn't have to be that way. And if it weren't that way, it would be like, wait, what do I do now? And it just might seem overwhelming. But it's this just pieced out in a really delightful way that I think is actually genius.
See, I wonder whether that's an area where like Ian O'Toole is not just like illustrating that, but might have actually contributed some of the structure there. Because like I don't think you can be as successful as Ian O'Toole is with his, the way he, there's so many different icons in this game, but it's still pretty digestible.
Very digestible.
His designer brain he's not just an artist. He is able to look at these things and then communicate how your brain can absorb it in a meaningful way. And I wonder if that strays into stuff that he might contribute as part of.
I wonder, because his the signature thing with an Ian O'Toole design is that like it's almost always very clean, and people call upon him for like a heavy convoluted game, because he usually is able to do iconography that just is somehow you're able to process more easily. It sort of gets stuff out of the way so we can focus on the game. And like this game is 100% like that. Like this game could have been a full-on disaster, and it's so clean and it's easy for me to parse through all the iconography. And on top of that, it has a wonderful player aid, one of these like sort of like little brochure player aids where you know what all the upgrades that you can get, you know what they all mean, you know what like all anything that you're like, what is that? You all have access, like a glossary. I love how user-friendly this game is. And the rule book is excellent too, except the only place where the rule book really kind of flops is that there are some built-in expansions in the game, and the rules are a little kind of, I felt like they were kind of written at the end, like, we got to write these expansion rules. And there were some ambiguities there,
Right.
but everything else really clean, really, really well done. And I just really appreciate when a company does that, because they're just trying to make the game as playable as possible for people.
I think that is certainly the case, that the design work and how it looks is trying to make it as playable as possible. Do I think that they winnowed this game down and simplified it to make it as playable as possible? No. There's a lot here. It's a long teach. It's not an impossible teach, but there is a lot. And there is, a certain amount of there's just a lot of different things going on here. Like, you've asked a question here in our little show notes about is there a defining mechanism or, in this game, or a defining mechanic? I'm having a tough time with that one, because
that's why I asked that.
because there's a lot. This is kind of like, well, you like this? We got this too. You want to do some card plays that give you little special, better versions of every other action? We got those too. You like the player board, where as you pull it off, you have, you're revealing different powers. Your player board has 36 different, pieces of wood on it that you can move around. It's like, it's got that too. So it has a lot of complexity, and I think you're absolutely right that it needed an E&O tool to make it manageable.
Right.
Because it is a lot. But the question is it too much? Is going to be a personal one.
Well, I actually think it's all very digestible. I think the game, it's getting a lot of comparisons to a Vidal Lacerda game, because, tool, and it's big and sprawling, but it's actually significantly lighter.
I agree.
Every single Vital Lacerda game to me, like, it is
in a good way.
Yeah, I think it's not either good or bad. I think it's
not in a bad way, but it's not in a good way.
It's just a different piece.
It is definitely a Lacerda inspired design.
I think actually at its heart, it's a midweight Euro.
Yeah,
I actually think for as big and as sprawling and as how long it takes to teach, it's a very straightforward game.
And that maybe is where you get into a slight downside, which is the teach is really long, but the decisions are a little bit more shallow than a Lacerda.
Yeah.
We're going to start arguing about weight again, because it's nothing here is especially complex. It's just, there's just a lot of it.
It's a lot. Yes.
Yeah,
a lot. 100%.
Right.
So does that make things highly complex? No, not really. It's just like we need weight to be more of a grid.
Right.
Where it's kind of like, rules weight versus actual rules complexity, where this would be solidly a midweight in terms of rules complexity, but number of rules, number of mechanisms, number of different elements high.
Yes, there are a lot of those things, which is why the player aid, I think, is really wonderful, because
and it's great.
Just it really just, there's certain things that just sort of you just can.
I kept laughing because I was at one point I was a little overwhelmed, and I would say, okay, I know I've asked this, Ben, Jordan, how do you do this thing? And you'll hold up the player, as you'll notice here on player 3, I'm in player aid. And I'm like, okay, you're right. I haven't looked at the player aid
again. You actually weren't that bad. You were so ashamed. You're like, oh, I'm so sorry, guys. I was like, listen, I've dealt with much worse. You asked twice. It was fine. But
the answer was, it's in the player aid. So
almost everything is in player aid, which is miraculous. But there is, I feel like it's a big teach, but ultimately the flow of the game is kind of you need to get blueprints, then you can turn those into actual rooms on your spaceship. And if you want to build another spaceship, you can go to an area where you can get a new engine and a cockpit. And then you also, you can pre-sale, you can get some customers to come in. You can also get some resources over here. You can get some more resources over here. You can build your developments over here, which might give you tech. And then you can book an itinerary. I think those are the main things you can do, and some other little ancillary actions. That's kind of it. You're just kind of it's like a recipe. Your spaceship is going to need an engine, a cockpit. It's going to need a pilot. It's going to need some customers. You need to put some rooms in there, have some spaces for people to stay in. And then, and you got the fuel, you got the food, you got the oxygen, sends it off to space. But you have to just sit and explain what every worker placement area is. And it just takes a while,
As a board, it's
massive.
There's a lot.
It's a very big board.
And it's dense.
Yeah.
There's a lot of information there to take in. Yeah. But on your second play, Are you wondering what these different things are on the board anymore? No.
Yeah, it like I find that like the learning curve is pretty. It's a good learning curve. Like you understand it. I think in terms of like one element to like for the thing that I would edit would be the agenda cards. There's this an agenda a card market where you can get these cards, and you can they have a resource in the bottom of them, so you can either play them as like a resource if you need to like.
Which is really an emergency thing. That's not the best use of them.
But it's like you can launch your rocket and you need a fuel, so you spend one of your cards, and you can also use them to pay for another. Like you want to refill a certain area for resources, you can spend a card and get a refill of resources.
Yeah,
but they basically all give kind of like rule breaking powers, and my issue with them, there's a lot of discussion about are they balanced or they're not balanced. My issue with them really is just that there's like a wall of text on the board. And especially if you're sitting, it's a long board, so almost always it's going to be 2 players on
You're
one
having to
side,
read it upside down.
And when you're sitting there and there's a card market that's upside down, and each card has 3 to 4 lines of text that are like not big text, at a certain point I'm like, I just don't care. I don't care. I don't want to engage with that. Like if I need that icon that's in the corner, I'll do it. But I found that to be very annoying.
I think you're right to be annoyed with the cards for sure. I think they are also probably not balanced. And even if they were balanced, some of them are so strong situationally that they wouldn't be balanced, in most games. But 3 of the actions, and there's only 12 actions in the game, 3 of the actions are all about those cards, right? You can take cards, you can refill the card market, and you can discard a card to refill a silo
the communal resources.
Yeah. And so to take them,
because we all work for the same company,
it's like it's a third of the game's action or fourth of the game's action. It's a lot to cut out. Yeah,
I think I actually like that the cards are there, and I actually like how the card market works. I think that in some ways, I mean, I would normally never advocate for this, but I actually would almost wish the cards were kind of like simpler and not language dependent. So that way you could just quickly see icons that say like spend these 2 resources, do this or whatever it was. I just wish. Like you could, wherever you were at the table, you could just see this market and know, oh, I need that card. Because the other thing is, sometimes in games like these, when you have a card market, there's an initial flop, and you have to sit. You have a moment where we read through every card, and so like, okay. But then as people take cards, a new card comes in, so you're digesting the new cards one at a time, and you're very able to be on top of it. But here, it's kind of like, if you're going to refill that market, the entire market goes out, and then 4 new cards come. That's a whole new wall of text.
Right. Pause. Read this wall of text.
Yeah. And I'm like, I don't want to do it.
I think an elegant solution would be to do what Soul Last Days of a Star did, which is there's like 6 suits of cards in those games, and those suits are just purple, orange, green. But then there's a whole bunch of abilities that can be associated with any one of those suits. And you just randomly put out 6 of those different abilities, and those are the 6 abilities for the game. And you know that those are the 6 from the beginning, and then you've got a random flow of the cards coming from the market. And you can still have a ton of variability by having
different icons at the bottom, maybe.
Sure, different icons at the bottom for resources in addition to the main power, or just a ton of different main powers, right? And so there's some cool things you could do with that would make it more digestible.
Yeah, that to me was the least.
That was a pain point. I mean, I have a little bit of that same issue in Civolution, where you've got cards that I'm like, I'm supposed to be taking a look at these cards in the middle of the game, but like there's just so much going on. I can't spare the bandwidth to actually stop and read and digest this card. Right. A lot of times. And Agricola kind of takes a different approach, which is like they have complex cards with lots of text, but at least you kind of get them up front. Exactly. You have them in your hand, and it's a question of like, can I use this? When will I use this? You're not introducing new curveballs all the time of like, can this help me? Can this help me? Oh, my God, this is perfect for me. This feels almost broken. It's so perfect for my current circumstance, which happened a few times. I would say so.
And on top of it, they're your cards. You're never thinking, okay, well, a new card just came into the market. How do I prioritize that? Because someone else might grab that card.
Oh, right. Jordan got that card now. I know he's going to do that. Oh, Ben's going to play his stupid robot navigator.
I did have a robot. Yeah, that was great.
And that was another way. Speaking of things being races, or it's like, oh, I've got tempo. I'm going to be able to grab this thing, robot navigator.
I was able to launch a ship without a pilot because I had a robot.
Which is kind of good because it broke what I thought was the conventional rhythm.
And that's the
game,
plus side.
but-
The cards do have really fun things you can do.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
like it would be kind of a pity to lose them because when you do get to play your card, it's really fun, you know. But just I think just the actual logistics of just sitting there at a table and all the cards are upside down and there's just. It's annoying. It's annoying to have to stop and be like, I need to look at all 4 of these things. We're already thinking about a lot of stuff as it is, you know.
Sure.
But that being said, I mean, you know, you can play the game without doing the cards that much. But yeah, you probably
They're
have to.
pretty good, though.
You probably have to really lean into those cards.
Pretty good.
You do have to do that.
It's kind of like playing Agricola without playing cards.
You gotta do
You're
it.
not really playing Agricola if you're not playing the cards.
What do you guys think about the whole worker placement, about the bumping and all that, and the sort of like did you enjoy that? Did you enjoy the bumping element of the game, or did that feel sort of like whatever?
We should say we play with the variant where there's a 4th player color out, and whenever that player color is bumped, it moves and it can bump another player.
Which did not seem to add much to me.
No, I
was
think
that
it,
necessary?
I
Was it
think-
necessary?
I think you spent a lot of
what
time
was cool
thinking
about it?
it's good to be in the space after that red thing because now there's 2 spaces that if someone wants to go there, you get bumped.
So I played a 4-player game, and with the 4-player game, there was constant bumping. Things were constantly going on and off. Like it's like there was a lot of movement, and I think if you just don't have that extra like element that's like causing the bumps, you're gonna wind up having a lot more of those meetings, and like the bumping is
It does keep the game moving along.
it moves
better, huh?
along. It's more fun. It's
Okay.
more interesting. There's more choices with that, and I thought the bumping was cool. It was I think it basically wound up just being like. There were some moments where you advocate like bump me, not them, but
I think Jordan kind of said this at the beginning, is that because the pieces do not block, and in fact you get rewarded when someone bumps you, it's like it's still worker placement. You're taking a worker, you're putting on a thing, you're doing the action there. Very much worker placement in that way, but it's also like the opposite of what we normally associate with worker placement of there's a finite number of actions.
Yeah.
What order do I need to do these things because this thing's going to go away? It's like, nope, you can always do whatever you want.
In the same way, in a similar way, though, the incentives are the same because you still want to go to the spot that someone else wants to go to before them because then you get the bump.
But then you get a nice little reward rather than my game will end if
My
I
game
don't
will end.
reno
Right.
yeah.
on this turn.
Right.
You know, so it's a different feel.
Right. You can more easily say, oh, I'll pass on that little bonus because I want to get this thing first to make that action stronger.
It's friendlier.
Right.
It's less consequential.
Right.
Yeah, and then
Do you think it's all a wash? Do you think over the course of the game, everyone's going to get about the same number of bonuses and what
Maybe.
we've been doing?
I think that one thing that no, you don't.
I don't know. I don't like this game has got so much going on, and like from our play so far, Jordan, you clearly understand it better than I do because you destroyed my position pretty well. I am very humble in trying to make any observation about like what is good or bad strategy wise in this game. I would need to play it a lot more to have too many thoughts. The things that I thought I was doing efficiently did not seem to actually turn out to be the correct place, you know?
Yeah, I forgot what I was gonna say. I was just talking about the developments. Like one thing you can do in this game is, you set up these developments, which means that if you put your worker in one section, you can activate the actions that are attached to that section, or you can sort of connect to an adjacent section using a development. But you can use other people's developments if you want to pay them. And I find that once in a blue moon, someone will pay, and especially in my 4-player game, people were paying more. But I find that people generally don't want to pay other people, and especially because it can get more and more expensive. And I feel like it's a really cool idea, but I almost wish I almost wish we had fewer developments that we could place, so that way you're really like, you have more moments you're really forced to pay someone else.
Yeah.
Like, because if we can all put a development in an area, then you're sort of like, you're losing certain interactions. On the other side, it's like it is forcing you to build developments because you're like, I don't want to pay people. So it's a motivator, but it would be fun, I think, if there was a little bit more like, I gotta use your stuff.
Maybe instead of having fewer developments that players can place, having fewer spaces for developments in between the action buildings.
Yeah,
because as it is,
good.
everybody can go to every one of them, and so if you just have only 2 spaces there, then
I guess I just would want. I feel like the development game looks like it could be more dynamic, and it's not that dynamic. But like it does. Like, there are moments where you say, you know what, I'm just going to pay you. And well, the other thing is, I guess then you can sort of walk it back, because then there is a reputation track, and as your reputation improves in the company, using people's developments becomes cheaper. So it does motivate you to go up that.
free.
Right.
Yeah, they can become free. So then it does motivate you to go up that track. So I don't know. I think I was expecting
in our
a certain
particular
experience with
game,
it
one
that I
of the
wasn't
three
getting.
things that the company wanted us to do was to actually build development. So we were incentivized to go that way anyway.
Mm-hmm.
But like there's a lot of the things that would normally be friction in other games are pretty mild.
Mm-hmm.
Really not that big of a deal for me to pay Ben one more credit in order to take this other action here.
And when it comes through, it's nice because a lot of times
and the
I'm
money,
like,
because the money is
$1.
flowing. There's times where you look over and I've got 18 credits.
Yeah.
And those can go away real quick.
Sure.
But it's not like one credit is that big of a deal.
Right.
It is kind of just a buck.
Yeah.
That you're throwing around.
Now, also the setup of the game board will also impact the importance of those developments because we mentioned in a previous episode that like the intro game, you use pre-printed action spots that are very synergistic and you can almost always do exactly what you want. But when you do a random setup, like that's actually where a lot of fun gets unlocked because you have tension of like, oh, I need to do this action, but I also need to do the action that's all the way over there. How can I make this work? And like you have these really suboptimal arrangement of actions that is great because I think then you have to really navigate and you're forced to be inefficient and you're trying to be as efficient as possible. It's like, how can I be efficient now when the two actions I need to do are exactly opposite themselves? And so I really like that. And I really I think that everyone should just completely skip the intro setup and just go directly to the standard game.
I agree. I also think that, we've played with a few of the expansions now, and there's one that gives asymmetric starts. I don't know what it's called. But I'd say start with that too.
Oh yeah, we like that a lot.
Yeah, it's really fun to have an asymmetric start.
Yeah, where
Because we chose the reward. So
you're given a choice of some starting upgrades, and that was really fun.
which feels a little bit like a Prelude style module for Terraforming Mars.
Mm-hmm.
Not quite as impactful as Prelude, but anything that kind of gets the game going and gets you a little further along the curve is probably a good thing.
Yeah, and you just also there are all those fun upgrades, and like one thing with this game is that you don't access your personal upgrades until you basically send off your first spaceship, and so usually it takes a while to get that first spaceship up, so like you don't get to play with some of the fun stuff for a long time. So this lets you just kind of play with the fun,
right? You start with
the
one
game, like what you don't have to wait so long, and that then brings in the talk about these Galactic Cruises that we send off. What do you think about those as a mechanic in the game, Jordan? This idea that we're sending off, we are building these cruises, you launch them, and then they're in space, and while they're in space, before every turn, depending on where they are in space, your passengers on your Galactic Cruise are going to do something different that's going to impact your gameplay. Right.
So we should say at the beginning of the game, each passenger type gets a sort of bonus reward that's associated with that color of passenger. And
either a victory point, a credit, or a bit of prestige.
Right.
Yeah.
I think those are the main three. There might be some other ways to do it. Yeah. But and then on the itineraries, there are spaces that are just days in space, and there are spaces that are on planets. And the days in space, your passengers score as a multiplier of the number of same colored rooms you have. So if you have 2 orange passengers and 2 orange rooms, you get 4 of whatever the orange passengers provide. And then on the planet days, you have to pay advertisements, which is one of the resources in the game, and to send your people down on an excursion to the planet, and they'll score points.
Yeah.
And so those are sort of the 2 ways that these people score. I think it's fun to have a little thing at the beginning of your turn where you get a little reward for having your ship in space. I also really like that the amount of time you spend in space sort of limits your worker pool. Mm-hmm. Because one of your workers has to be the captain of that ship.
Right. It's tied up.
And they're tied up. They're captaining the ship. They can't help you do other things on the ground. And that is a really fun mechanic because it makes it A, it's more likely you're going to have to call a meeting. B, can I really afford to have 2 ships in space and only have 1 or 2 workers down on the ground doing things for me? So I think that limitation is really fun. And I think getting the rewards is also really fun. So I like that bit of design.
Yeah.
I think it was my favorite part.
I think it's
of the game.
I think it's actually
because when you actually look
amazing.
at like at first glance, the ships don't look that separate, and because we have like a starter ship, and so it's kind of just defined by the rooms that make up the center of the ship. But then once you launch and you start doing missions, like the game does pivot at that point where like I'm getting income from this, I'm landing people, but you're determining when you're doing your second build, there's a lot of different rewards in terms of like, what's the engine on this thing? What's the cockpit on this? This is going to reward. That's going to highly specialize you. Who am I building this for? Am I marketing this towards families? Am I marketing this towards adventurers? Or what's the other one, like partiers or something?
People who are family tourists, people who want relaxation, and people who are
adventurers, kind of, And those are, and so that's interesting because you're also like, there's different itineraries that can reward specialization or reward diversity in terms of what you're doing. So to me, that was
passenger pool. You can see what the demand
and
is
different
for.
excursions. The planets will appeal to different people, and like what I think is actually so cool is that the how you build your ship is actually going to matter. Like it matters what you put into the ship, and it matters what customers you advertise to. So this could have been kind of like a throwaway mechanic. Like you make your ship and then you send it off. It like, I think of Shipyard, the game.
Yeah, right. Similar to Shipyard in that one.
Which is a great, great, great game. Did you ever play that, Jordan? Yep. So that game, you're building ships. And
Did Tom make you play that, Jordan?
Exactly, yep.
But it's a great game. And you're making these ships and you're adding all these features onto them. And the reason why you add these features is because eventually when your ship sets sail, you're going to get scored by a bunch of different things on the ship, features on the ship, but you also go on this like cruise. And based on your ship, you're going to get scored. But that all happens all at once and then it's done. And then your ship is just there. And I love the idea that we send our ship into space and there's like an initial scoring you get. And then like you have a day in space, so your passengers are bored. So they need to be occupied, and like you're just kind of like
so they're spending money at the casino.
They're on your roller coaster, which somehow is, I don't know if that roller coaster is fun in 0G, but whatever.
Right.
And like they're doing things, and there was like a bouncy park, right? Which we're like, oh, that'll be interesting in 0G. But I like that. Then this is also something that we check in on at the beginning of every turn, so it really feels like this is not just a fun. You made a spaceship and then it's done and it goes. It's like it's going, it's active, and like what it does in space. You're going to get resources. Usually, you're going to get things that you can then apply to your regular turn. I just think it's kind of like so smart.
One of the things I always love about the end of Agricola, because I compare everything to Agricola, though, is like you look at your farm and like that's your dollhouse of like even win or lose. Here's my cool farm that I've built. I think this has an almost an aspect of that, which is at the end of the game, we're going to look at our ships, and those ships are going to reflect the game that you played and what your priorities were, whether you were successful or not. Like I think we could look at your ships at the end of the game, Jordan, and say, compared to Trey's ships, oh, this was the winning. This was a better combination of things. You did quite well with kind of a small junkie.
Yeah, so I did this is something that comes up in Shipyard. Like you do the mega ship that you do like 2 mega ships in the entire game and then that's it, or you do a bunch of little ones. And this is the first time I played in the most recent game. The first time I did like, let's do shitty spaceships and where it can only fit 1 passenger as opposed to multiples. And I just was trying to get them out. And I actually felt like I did pretty well considering I had no agenda cards and I was doing shitty spaceships.
But it's great tension.
It was. And I think actually the strongest interaction in the game and where I feel the most tension is like, I feel like the race is very palpable. Like I feel it. I
felt it.
You feel because as those cubes go down on the track and you just, the clock starts to tick and you're like, oh, I need to get the ship up, especially because sometimes like the ships you mentioned before, when they launch, they'll score something. Like you might get a scoring thing that says when you launch, you're going to get 1 point for every room you've built across your entire fleet, which is actually, we all have that. That's a starter thing. But if you have a really good one, and if you can launch that ship multiple times over the course of the game, you could be getting so many points. So then you're like, oh, I need to get this ship up in space. I need to get back down right away because like I see Jordan's doing a mega ship, and like the moment he gets his mega ship up in space, everything that I'm doing is gonna be nullified. So I need to get as much of a,
which is also the timer. Yeah. The more ships launch, the quicker the game.
Right. So like you are paying it. I found that I was definitely paying attention to other people's ships, their progress on them, where they'd be going off. Like I cared about everyone's tempo a lot, and I felt it like I was very tense on the inside.
Yeah. I think it's a really interesting decision how you construct your ships and whether you go for really small ones or one really big one. And like in the last game, I think it's interesting too. I never even launched my starter ship.
Yeah.
So I only had one ship that launched. And Ben, I think you had 3.
I had 3, and actually I think it was if you build a ship and never launch it, you lose 5 points. And I actually think I got sucked into like sunk cost fallacy because I had to get another ship for some reason, and then I should have just sacrificed those 5 points and just ran my good ship.
Super ship.
It wasn't even a super ship. It just had a really good scoring condition on it, and I should have just done it over and over again. And you found an amazing combo, Jordan. I don't know if I could have even caught up to you. I think I was 20 points behind you, which is like, it was a significant win, but like it wasn't
so crazy.
It wasn't so crazy that if I had been played more efficiently, I probably could have nipped at your heels a little bit more.
I think my favorite thing about the game with regard to the shipbuilding is the way the game makes you feel you're breaking the rules.
Mm-hmm.
So by default, a ship can have 3 rooms in it. 3 rooms can only hold 2 passengers. You can only have 3 ships. But there are powers that let you put a 3rd guy on your ship that can only hold 2 people, or have 4 ships, or build ships that are 4 units tall. And even though those are inbuilt in the game, they feel like you're really breaking the rules. You're like, oh man, I'm just throwing another guy into this ship, and he's going to add another, a 50% increase in my score on this giant
deal
ship.
when you can add
it's massive, exactly.
more
Even though it's one little guy.
Every time Jordan sent his spaceship up in there, I was so mad. I was like, fuck that ship.
Well, especially because he's like, okay, so I'm launching my ship.
So many people on
and
it
that's
at all
24
times.
points. Like, what?
Yeah.
Like when I launched my ship, it was 8.
So
you had these mega ships.
It was interesting because in that game, I had this card that said, my starting power had to do with reputation, and I had 2 to choose, and I picked the reputation one, and there was a cockpit on the table that said, when you launch, score your reputation. And so I just got those 2 things, and that was my entire game.
Yeah.
Like, that kind of combo is fun. I don't know.
Yeah, and I actually had a starting power that I took specifically so I could do the I was going to lean into something in the game, and I drafted that starting power specifically for that, and then I completely forgot about it. And remember, it was like 3/4 of the way through. I was like, oh,
that's right.
I wasted all this tempo trying to do something.
Yeah.
And I forgot that I had the power all along, and I could have launched a ship another once or twice, which could have been the thing that closed the gap. I mean, like, you do have to kind of make sure you remember the powers that you have.
This is a game where we found, like, because there's a lot, and that can be good or bad, we did a lot of, like, you had the moment of like, oh, I had this all along.
Yeah.
I think as we played, there were certainly a number of times where we were like, oh, I totally should have gotten some points or money for this. And we were allowing it, of course. But there was a lot of, like, there's just a lot of times where, like, oh, I should have gotten something for this, should have gotten something for that.
Yeah.
This thing combines with this thing. Oh, I forgot to do that. Like, it's a lot to track. You almost want, like, it would be easier if it were on BGA, where all of that stuff would just be automated.
Well, we also, in our last play, we threw in a bunch of the expansion content. So the things that we
try it out,
to try it out. One thing that we played with was that the worker placement spots, as soon as there were 3 developments adjacent to them, then this thing would turn over, and you get like a little perk if you went there, which I actually liked.
Yeah,
that was actually helpful to me because I was very poor, and so
it makes the game richer.
Another thing that we played with was there's also, amongst everything else, there are 4 techs that are available that are different from your upgrades. These are techs that will do things like you can spend 1 fewer fuel when you launch, things like that. And in the base game, they're just there, and you put a development on it, and now you have access to it. But we played the expansion where, like, every time someone uses the tech, this tracker goes up, and then at a certain point, the tech just upgrades. And so now it's like when you launch, it was 2 fewer fuel instead of 1 fewer fuel. But then as the tracker's going up, the cost for using the tech goes up for other people, or the cost of build a development. And I think we all agreed that was a little fussy and unnecessary, right?
Yeah. I don't think any of them got to the end of their tracks.
One of them did, but that point I don't think I would play
We
with
also
that.
might have missed some of the times that they should have advanced, because it was just one of those things that there's just so much going on. It was easy to lose track of that thing got triggered.
I think off of one play, it was not very apparent that this was a super strong module.
Agreed.
Right? I don't think I would feel compelled to play that one.
The one module we haven't, so we did play one other module that said the rooms that you build normally in the base game, they just all connect to one another. And this module said each room will connect either to the left, center, or right column. And so you have to, in addition to finding the rooms you want, do the spatial puzzle, which I thought was fine. and it was interesting. But there's another set of room tiles. There's a third set in the box we haven't tried yet that turns those rooms into like worker placement spots where you send your passengers to them. And I want to try that. That seems cool.
That's probably interesting. I liked the spatial puzzle, although I did get screwed by it. I drafted 2 rooms that I could not put together, and that also messed me up big time, which could be a really fail bad moment for people. But I liked like having to decide like, oh, I can't just like care that this is a family room. I have to worry about like how does it fit with the other things. So
for me, it operated more like another limitation. It wasn't. It was like, oh, it
wasn't amazing.
You need a room on the left, so like, oh, there's only 4 room options out there. So it's like, okay,
it was
I can't
cool
take
it
these
wasn't anything,
2. You know,
it wasn't anything special.
Right.
I think that like actually where the expansion is best is where they just throw in just more things, like more upgrades for your little tower, or more like more options for your advanced workers, things like that.
I mean, this has kind of happened to Terraforming Mars. It just happened over a period of years where they built expansions where you could kind of add stuff on, whereas a lot of this stuff was like right there in the Kickstarter. And there's a lot in those Terraforming Mars expansions that I don't really like, you know, don't want to play with.
Yeah, and they just announced today a new expansion that they're crowdfunding, which
for Galaxy Cruise, Galactic Cruise,
which I don't think I'm going to back. I think it seems like it's kind of like a campaign thing. Like as you play, you unlock boxes that you open up, and I don't know.
I saw a comment somewhere that said you could add it all in right away. I think it's one of those like we're slowly revealing the new ingredients.
It's like Tuscany
over the course of a few games. Yeah, exactly.
You know, like how like Tuscany, Viticulture Tuscany is technically a legacy game.
Yeah.
I have a question though. There's something that we didn't talk about that when we played it was something that you brought up, which is that they're on the progress track. There are these public goals to go after. So an example would be the first person to build 5 developments gets to claim a public goal. And then after they do that, then it might go up to, now the next person to claim it will have to do 6, and the next person to do 7. And Trey, you had mentioned that you felt like it was a rich get richer thing.
I did.
Mm-hmm.
I think I've softened a little bit on that. I think it's more, this falls in the category of this game has a lot of cool things that I'm not sure it made the game better. That could have been edited out and wouldn't have affected things very much. I think this is kind of in that category. I was on the receiving end of, hey, these doors were closing to me.
Yeah.
And the game kind of felt over at the first scoring because it was. I was because of the way that the cubes work. You were going to continue to get rewarded, Jordan, for the early cubes you scored.
Right. We should say that the cubes, when you complete a goal, not only do they go out, but they also increase your multiplier for all cubes that you score.
So I both like questioned whether this was a bit of complexity that the game needed, but I also felt like this is in danger of a rich get richer, and the person who's losing has doors slammed in their face type of thing. I'm just saying, so emotionally, it felt bad, and I felt like I was out of it early on. So as a designer, I'm kind of hyper attuned to I quit moments, especially because as a player, I experience them more than the average bear. So like that was definitely kind of like an eye roll for me. I don't think it's terrible. It's just another, like, there's so much that's going on in this game that's cool. You know, like I understand the thought. It's an interesting thing. Was it necessary?
Yeah. I don't personally mind it because I like that it adds urgency to.
In the game's defense, I think you probably weren't really competing on those goals because you didn't maybe recognize their full importance.
That they're super important.
Right, exactly. Right. And if you had been trying to gun for them, you probably wouldn't have come in last on all 3, right? You would have like worked. Yeah. And then it would have had a more balanced outcome.
It's fine to lose, but it also just meant that the slope that I had to climb got steeper.
Yeah, it's not a nice feeling when you're like, oh no, I lost out on another one. And I mean, I think, the good side about them is that it does kind of like force you to not just go into your standard loop of like, I'll get blueprints and I'll build them and I'll get passengers. And this is like, I'm like, oh, I kind of have to stop.
I have to focus
on some of these elements here that the game wants me to. And so I like that element. And I personally don't have an issue with them getting harder the later you are, but I should say I didn't have an issue with it, but I have thought about it. Like, does it have to be that, like, if you are second to the party, that it gets harder? Does it have to get harder? Like, what does that mean?
There are other ways to reward you for getting there first. One way that they could reward you for getting there first is just gating it. only one person in the first era may achieve this objective, right?
Which
And
again,
then-
that's kind of terraforming Mars with the milestones, right?
sure.
Like the first person to have 3 trees on the planet,
Mhm.
Gets the thing. And we all know,
Or on
that's the thing, that
Mars.
as an experienced terraforming Mars player, I know, like, I need to get one of those milestones.
On
Like,
Mars,
that's some of the
gates
easiest.
like that, right? Sorry, I interrupted you, but like,
No, it's-
there's on Mars. There's like an element on Mars, like if you build like this kind of building or something like that, then you can get like credit on this one track. But then if you're like the second person to build it before the other ones have all been built, then you don't get any credit.
Sort of, yeah.
Yeah, I don't remember.
There's some.
Yeah, if the society doesn't need that resource, it doesn't score. You can still do it though.
I do think that aspect makes the game a better competitive game. Like if it's just like I'm going to go to a convention and I'm playing in a tournament and I'm playing to win, then that's cool. Like I understand, it's fine. As a just like, hey, we're friends playing around a table, my gamer experience was, oh, this is going to suck for some people because there's a lot to take in.
Yeah.
And you can definitely get behind the curve and there can be huge disparities in score. And also just like just frustration of like, oh, I'm really not doing what
Yeah.
other people are doing in this game.
People are able to find some crazy combos. In my 4-player game, my friend, he had the power that every time he advanced on the reputation track that he would get the goods for it. And then what he would do is he would there was also a reward for if you found family, if you brought families onto your spaceship, then if they had a day in space, you would get reputation. And
so
then
that's
he
a
would
super
He
combo,
would get
yeah.
6 reputation each time, and so then he would go up 6 and get 6 resources, which made it easier for him to then. And there was like a tech on the board that allowed you to make your cruises go faster than they normally would. So
Right.
he was just like cycling through, and he just was killing us. He found a super combo, and I don't know. Is that maybe this is the sort of game where you find these different combos and.
That's funny because that's almost exactly the same combo that I had in our game. And I'm wondering if maybe now that you've said that and it's appeared in 2 of the very few games you've played of this, if there's a balance issue.
There might be a balance issue with that.
Too soon to
upgrade.
say.
I think
Too soon
I
to say,
seem to
but-
remember seeing somewhere on BGG that someone had flagged that, and then I couldn't find it again. But like,
Because the reputation track at the end of it, every extra reputation's a point. There's always someone who's going into space that will give you reputation. So if you can flog it enough, you can just get an extra 10 points every time.
and like theoretically, the way you could say, well, then it's up to the other players to recruit the reputation players, maybe. But I don't know if that's totally realistic to offset that entire thing. So that definitely was.
It's probably fine if that's just the first of the kind of like obvious combos that's always there, and it's just the first one that we've discovered.
Yeah, that's
And
true.
if 5 of them emerge, so that when you're going into the game, you're like, which of these ways am I going to pivot?
Yeah.
The same. I don't know. It's a little bit like the same way when you play Catan. You should be looking at your setup and saying, is the first thing I'm doing building a settlement or building a city?
Yeah.
Like things that are not obvious, but like this is a path to go down. Here's a path to go down. Which of these am I going to go down based upon what my setup and what the rewards are in this game?
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. But it's also kind of not stopping everyone from doing that. Right.
Except that there's a limited number of passengers who score in that color.
But that would actually be a decent limitation, right? Because now you're spending more publicity or whatever the marketing.
You can always spend 4 ads to get a color of your choice, assuming that they're still left in the supply.
Right, when you're recruiting passengers.
But in a sense, like that would actually be the system working correctly, which is that getting the guests that reward you with prestige are highly expensive.
Not to get like too deep into it, but the real
Yeah.
problem is that it doesn't make any sense to have a diverse spaceship. You want to have a spaceship that's all one color.
Yeah.
It's either all adventure, all family.
Well,
or
I've
all
wondered about
adventure.
that. Yeah.
Well, there,
In my opinion,
the one pushback on that, well, I think you're right. I think the one pushback is that some of the rooms you can build can appeal to 2 different populations.
Sure.
So if you have a situation where like I have a spaceship that's full of rooms that appeal to both family people and relaxation. So maybe the first time it goes off, it's full of families that score me a lot. But then maybe the next time, if there's no families that are around, it like gives me some flexibility in terms of I can put other people in it. But I think ultimately, though, you're right. I don't think that like diversity in your spaceship is very prized.
Right. Those double rooms are good and they're more expensive to compensate for that. But because you're doing a multiplication of passengers times rooms of that color, you want to be able to maximize both of those numbers, and that means not having diverse spaceships. So if one thing rewards reputation, and I'm going for reputation, and you're going for reputation, and you're going for reputation, or actually, no, and you're going for something else, Trey. Ben and I are both going for reputation. We're going to be really fighting hard. And I don't know if is that what the dynamic of the game is supposed to be? Is it like two of us have to fight over reputation?
I think it's one of those games, and I often like this, where based upon what the random setup is, you're supposed to make an assessment there at the beginning of kind of say, what's this game about?
Yeah, I like that too.
I mean, maybe there's also value. Maybe there's value in having a diversity in your spaceship where you say, okay, well, yes, if I concentrate on this type of customer and this type of room, I'm gonna like come in, when I have a day in space, I'm going to get $6, which is really cool. But there may be value in saying, well, when I have a day in space, I get $2, but then I also get like a resource and I get this, like you get like a little bit of everything. Then maybe there's some value in having a little bit of everything.
Wasn't that one of our corporate rewards is that we had to do 2 different colored landings? So you wanted to have different.
You wanted, but you don't need to have the correct people. You just pay an extra ad.
Yeah.
So
the whole thing.
Anyway,
I don't know.
Well, that's probably You
just spend
then
more.
You just get the correct colored itinerary.
Yeah, I don't know.
I know we're just going down the rabbit hole here, but
now it's very, very specific. So now let's coming in to land our spaceship here. I just want
coming back into port.
I want to touch base on some quick questions
to disembark.
Player count. I played it at 3. Did I play it at 2-player? I think I played a 2-player on TTS once, and it was fine. I personally think 4-player was my favorite because there's more interaction in terms of bumping and developments and things like that on the board. But I thought 3-player was very strong because it moves quicker with 3 players.
I've only played at 3, so
yeah.
This game has a little bit of like the Maracaibo thing where when the game ends can feel. And sometimes it's like, this is taking too long, and then it kind of ends very suddenly. Very hard to predict when it's going to speed up, and that can be frustrating, but it makes a certain amount of sense. But yeah, there's this weird acceleration at the end that doesn't always feel great, but may just be like, oh, I just don't understand the system well enough.
That's where you have to like really also look at what other people are doing because otherwise you'd be caught with your pants down.
100%. I know in our last game, Ben was sending up ships, and the minute they landed, they were ready to launch again. Like he had all the resources and the passengers.
You were a well-oiled machine.
And so if you're doing that, it's like, okay, the ship's coming down, it's going right back up. That's one more cube. Like we're going to keep doing this. It's going to be 1 cube every 3 turns.
Right. And I was definitely feeling like, oh, I'm 1 turn short based on where this is going to end. Like, oh, this ship I had ready to go is not going to make it.
Yeah.
So what do you think about variability with this game?
I haven't played it enough. Listen, there will be very different boards the way it comes out with the different action spaces, the different corporate rewards that they're asking
your
for.
Starting abilities.
We haven't even talked about like what's the super worker called?
The expert worker.
The expert worker is going to have a unique power each time. So I think it probably resets pretty significantly each time.
I think each game will have a different sort of texture to it, but I think you still go through the same loop of but it's a fun loop. So
I also really like that there's this variable setup, but I'm wondering if the core strategies are going to be the same regardless of the setup.
But I don't know. It's like it feels like you go through the same loop, but I already have found my games have all been different, and like there is that element of like in this game I'm going to go for smaller ships, or I'm going to go for bigger ships, or maybe I'll go for a big fleet, or maybe I'll focus on this area. So I can see there being. I think the variability is pretty good on this one. I don't know. But maybe it could feel samey.
I think actually the cards add a ton of variability. You have a lot of problem with them.
I just wish they were easier to read.
Yeah.
I wish they were. All right. Well, I mean, so final thoughts? Trey, what is your final thought? Was this game fun for you? Did you enjoy it? Like, what do you think?
I think this is a solid game. I'm definitely not saying this is a bad game. I think I would still recommend it, especially for the game brain crowd. Mm-hmm. Like you should check it out. You should learn to play it. I do think that for me, who's always kind of looking for elegance, there's a lot of cool ideas in here, and there's just a lot. Mm-hmm. Like there's a lot, and even if these ideas are kind of cool, to me there was a little too much. A lot of times. So I don't know. I felt like I went out on a good date with Galactic Cruise. Yeah. And I felt like, you know what, this game's going to be somebody's perfect partner, but it's not mine. Maybe if they got their act together and kind of got rid of some things that are going on in their lives, that would be the right game for me. But where I'm at right now, there's too much going on with this game to be my game that I want to play again and again. The way you were describing a group that like plays Dune Imperium over and over again, or I know other people that play Agricola over and over again, and like that's a super high bar. So I think solid game. Check it out. I'm not in love.
Okay,
I'm not dying to play it again.
Yeah. What about you, Jordan?
I think I'm a little higher on it than Trey. I would definitely play it again. I'm curious to see, different ways to break the rules, different strategies you can come up with. I think we started off with a little comparison to Lacerda, and I'll bring it back here. I don't think that this game is as deep as a Lacerda game, which requires from me at least like 10 plays to really get into, because the systems don't interact with each other quite as much. They're more a little separate. They're a little simpler. And so for me, there's not that really, huge amount of depth that I want to explore all these connecting systems, but I do want to try out the different strategies, and I've had a lot of fun with the game so far. So I definitely think you should check it out. I know that you have a copy, and with some games, you having a copy would not deter me from buying a copy.
Yeah.
I think that's probably not the case with this game. I think I'll probably just play your copy and enjoy that. But I'm happy to play it several more times to see the different strategies and experience the theme, which I really enjoy.
Yeah, I'm happy to be the Galactic Cruise ambassador.
Yeah.
I really like this game.
You could be the Julie.
I'll be Julie. By the way, we didn't mention that it has an absolutely fantastic insert, and it's great. But I enjoyed this game more than I thought. I kind of like backed it on a whim. I don't know what I was thinking. And then when we played on TTS, I was like, oh, this is fun. It's fun. But I found like I came alive a lot more with the varied setup. I think there's a lot of fun to be had. I think it's a really clever game, and really, I think it's very fun forward. We talked about fun forward before. It's like, it wants to, I think, just have fun sending these ships up in space, and you have these passengers and everything. And there's a lot of really cool stuff in it. It's maybe sort of like misses like whatever that like X factor is that you might find in a game like Barrage, which is so unfair to compare it. But like with Barrage, almost instantly you feel that tension inside you. You're like, oh my God, I'm going to do this, I'm going to do that, And here, I don't feel that same tension, but I really appreciate that I feel the pressure of the race, and that you do feel like the walls are closing in on you, and I like it a lot. And I think it's a very fun game. I think its size and its table presence makes it look like it's going to be just like a super, super heavy game, really complex. And I think it's just a busy game. And obviously, I don't even think it's even that busy. I think agenda cards are unfortunate for me, but I think the flow is very clean and straightforward. And I think it's a very fun game. And so I really enjoy it. And I'm happy to be the Galactic Cruise ambassador for the Game Brain group here in LA.
One more thing to the game's credit. I really enjoyed this conversation about it. I think it's an interesting design to study in this way, because it has a lot of different aspects. It has this weird card deck. It has this very elegant launch system. It has these cool things that are worth experiencing and considering as you think about, innovations in game design or whatever.
There's a lot of cool stuff. I mean, again, there's stuff that we just didn't even get to. And I find when I play it, I'm like, this was a really smart decision. Like a lot of times I'm saying that. And I am excited to explore some more of the strategy in it. And I think there'll be a lot of people who will, in our group or people outside the group, who will really enjoy this one.
100%.
Yeah. So, all right. So I think like largely a positive review for this one. Maybe not like a rave, but like for me, I feel like it's a very good game, and I'm happy to have purchased it. And
I think it'll really hit for some. I was thinking about this. I think it will really, for some people, it is the right date.
Yeah.
For them, I suspect it will be people, if you know yourself and you're not necessarily looking for mastery out of a game, but like if still like learning new games is the main pleasure you get in playing games, there's a lot to learn here. Yeah. And so like I could see Matt really liking this too, where like just because like I think a little ways like I've aged out a little bit of the like just learning new games is inherently pleasurable.
Yeah, sure.
Like I'm getting less out of that. I'm looking more for my all-time game I want to play and master. But if you're going to conventions, trying new stuff, like you're going to get a ton out of this one.
Yeah.
And there already is kind of like a bias towards complexity in the BGG ratings. And I think this will, I think this will get very good reviews.
It will, because it's a really good game, and I think also there's like a lot of elements where when you do one thing, you're creating an opportunity for someone else, and I always like when a game does that. So there are some sort of smaller points of interaction that are fun, and I think there's a lot of fun to be had here, and a lot of fun stuff to explore, and paths to go down in terms of synergizing different tech upgrades, so I think there is a lot here, and I really like it a lot, and I can definitely, I'm very happy to have this one in my collection.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I saw the no pun included review of this, and I'm still not sure exactly what they thought. It seemed generally positive.
It seemed positive.
I was
waiting for the other shoe to fall. I was waiting for him to say, it's all very nice and all very good. But I mean, because the headline of it is like, this game is very safe. I thought it was gonna be like, okay, this game is really fun, but it's safe, doesn't do anything new and exciting, yada, yada, yada. But it didn't even seem to really get to that.
I've seen it twice now, and I'm still like, I'm not sure I know really what they think.
He seemed almost like he was trying to come up with something bad to say at the end, and he didn't know what to say. So I think it was positive.
Interesting,
which surprised me. I thought he was going to rail on it. But just based on that headline. But I think people. I feel like a game like this will probably be on BGA. It'll probably get an app, and I think people will be able to explore it. And I think it'll be a real fun one for a lot of people.
Would you rather play this game or Carnegie?
Well, that's an interest. I think Carnegie is a more. Well, it's just I think the interaction is a little richer in that one, and Carnegie does some just really cool stuff.
But that's not a bad comparison. If it's kind of like, this is.
I've only played Carnegie once, but
no, okay.
Yeah. I mean, I'd be more excited to play Carnegie because I had that one good play, and I'd like to try it again.
I think Carnegie is an amazing game, and I've been wanting to revisit it, and it does a lot of. I think Carnegie has tougher choices. That's what it is. I think Carnegie has real tough dilemmas, and I think maybe this game doesn't have tough dilemmas. I think maybe this game is like really fun, and there are dilemmas you have. Where you're going to work, where you're going to put your worker, how am I going to be efficient? What am I going to do? But it doesn't have kind of those like, oh, if I do this, I'm really like, but I need that too. And what if? You just sort of do it and you find a way, and it's fun. And the fun is in editing through the mess, I guess.
Yeah, this is really just a race game. So the decision is always what's more efficient. Can I waste time here? Mm-hmm. It feels like.
Yeah, whereas Carnegie is like, oh, like where do I put my workers? Do I spend the money here? Do I not spend the money here? Do I wake this worker up? Do I go in this city? And Carnegie's great.
Maybe it's not a good comparison. I think when I played Carnegie, I'd struggled with the question of like, is it too much? And it was on the border of being too much, but wasn't. But it was like right on the border. Whereas this one, I think, overstepped.
Did you ever play Carnegie again in person?
Yeah.
Oh, okay. So
once it actually came out,
yeah,
played it again. I like it.
Yeah, I think it's great. When I played Carnegie for the first time, I was like, this game is amazing. This is. I already knew in January of that year that this was going to be one of my favorite games of the year. Whereas I did not feel that way with this. Not that this game's not like, oh, this is some crappy game. Sometimes you just know, you feel it inside your heart. You're like, oh yeah, this is hitting all my pleasure zones right now. And this one, I think Galactic Cruise is very fun and very good. And it does a lot of really, really cool stuff. But I would not say it's like at that level of Carnegie or the Transcontinental or Hegemony for me. And it doesn't have to be.
Right.
I think it's
That's
like,
right.
we can't, it's like, I'm not going to compare it to all my favorite games of every year,
Sure.
So
that's not fair.
We kind of expect perfection. I think a lot of people will play this and have a very, very fun time with it. And there's also stuff to explore that I'm excited to.
It makes me want to play Kanban again.
Sure. Yeah. I'd love to play Kanban.
Kanban's great.
Yeah.
I think that's actually the best. That is the best comparison, because there you are going to different parts of the board.
Yeah, there's some Kanban, serious Kanban DNA.
And you are,
Yeah.
But it is more streamlined and interesting, I think. Yeah.
What's nice is that it's like Kanban, but
this
you
is
don't
more
have
interesting than Kanban?
No, I think Kanban is
Oh, yeah.
more streamlined.
Kanban is more interesting. Kanban, I think, Kanban is obviously the better game.
Yeah.
But what's nice about this is that you can kind of get like a Kanban-esque game where you don't have, you can it's a little bit more like
it's brave
we're
to go
entering
into Lacerda
delightful.
territory. This was a courageous design decision.
Yeah, it's more of like a delightful. It's like a delightful romp through Kanban territory, as opposed to Kanban where you're like, oh my god, Sandra, you know,
Sandra.
Well, we've hit this interesting point, which is like, okay, but shouldn't we all just play Kanban? I don't know. That's where I end up a lot of the times with
Yeah.
new games.
But like,
That's where I'm.
I feel that, but it's not fair. It's not fair.
It's
to
not
these games
fair.
because the question is more
because someone
like,
might not have ever played Kanban, right?
by the way,
But they should.
Kanban. There will be plenty of people that'll be like, no, I'm never playing Kanban ever again. This game is ridiculous. And I think
don't
it's
play
important.
this.
Well, no, I think that like you might not Kanban. Maybe there's a lot of stuff in Kanban where you're like, wait, okay, so in this scoring I care about parts, in this scoring I did this, and then this game is like, you know what, build your spaceships and have fun,
Right.
and have fun doing it. I think that like if you like Shipyard, I think you're gonna like this one. Personally, I think that's actually probably the strongest comparison. You're gonna build a big old thing and you're gonna send it off and have fun with it.
You're absolutely right. This is a more akin to a shipyard.
I think it's a delight forward game with some good strategy and some fun stuff in it. And you can tell some fun stories as you go along. We were telling stories about my spaceship that only had one passenger in them, and I was
robot captain, right?
I always hate your robot.
and I was rebranding it as like it was an exclusive solo tour.
Right.
So yeah,
Right?
all right. You have been listening to Game Brain, produced and edited by Matthew Robinson, Tom Donnelly, Trey Alsop, and Ben Mandelker. Special thanks to Daedalus for incredible music. More on Daedalus at GameBrainPod.com. And thanks to Edmar Pelek for incredible graphics. You can reach us by email at contact@GameBrainPod.com. And thanks for listening. And go play some games with friends or make some friends with games. And also throw in our name for the BGG Awards.
And watch Ben on Heavy Cardboard.
Thank you. Yes.
And watch Ben on Heavy Cardboard.
Ow!
Yeah.
Paul's not here.